Okay, you
You
have
ready to go?
you have the comm. Take it away.
Thanks, sir. Okay, this is the meeting of the July 2nd, 2020 Planning and Zoning Commission, our regular meeting. It's held at the City Council chambers, and I'd like to call this meeting to order. In the first order of business, I'd like to ask those in the auditorium to please stand and face the flag. And Mr. Estrada, if you would be so gracious as to lead us all in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Mr. Estrada. Now, could I have roll call, please?
Yes. Member Estrada?
Here.
Member Snyder? Member Snyder?
Present.
Member Anderson?
Here.
Member Dugan? Here. Member Tucker? Member Tucker? Vice Chairman McBride?
Here.
And Chairman Miller is not here, I don't think.
Okay, thank you very much, Linda. Is there any changes? I'm sorry, I missed that. Was there any changes to the agenda?
No changes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Okay, before we get the meeting started, for those of you who haven't attended a planning and zoning meeting, I'll go over our process. First off, we'll start with the city staff. There will be a presentation of the information on the item before the board. And after that, the board will ask the city staff member any questions we have. After the city staff member gives their presentation, the applicant or the representative will present any information that they feel is relevant. Then the board will ask those persons questions if we have any. At the end of those presentations, we'll open it up to the public, and the public can call to speak on the subject. If they have any questions for the applicant, we will take down the questions and have the applicant return to the podium to respond afterwards. If a question has been asked once, please refrain from asking the question again. And I'll also ask to limit your response or your questions to 3 minutes. Okay. I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the May 7th, 2020 meeting.
I make a motion to approve the minutes of May. Second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. All approve?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, now for new business. The first one will be public hearing and consideration of a request by Virtual Sidewalk LLC for SBA Towers number, my Roman numerals are skipping me. I'm guessing it's LLC for a conditional use permit to remove the sunset date imposed on conditional use permit DSA 15-00059, which approved an 80-foot tall wall monopole wireless telecommunication for 1220 East Courtson Road, otherwise known as Cactus Middle School. DSA 20-00068 is the new number for it, and that will be presented by James Gagliardi. Mr. Gagliardi.
Thank you, Commissioner McBride. As you introduced this item, this is indeed a conditional use permit request for an existing wireless telecommunication facility. About 5 years ago, Planning Commission approved a conditional use permit to allow an 80-foot tall, non-camouflaged cell tower at the Cactus Middle School site. A conditional use permit is required in this particular zone district when the height of the cell tower exceeds 28 feet. A 5-year time frame was placed as a condition on this conditional use permit in order to give the Planning Commission reconsideration of this should more sensitive development occur nearby this facility and allow an opportunity to reevaluate the request, specifically with regard to the fact that it was uncamouflaged. For more specific information regarding where this is located, it's towards the very north portion of the Cactus Middle School parcel in the northeast portion of the parcel. Of course, Cactus Middle School is on the north side of Courtson Road and east of Treckle. At the time, there was some sensitivity to this location because particularly if you notice on the aerial here, you have Casa Verde and Casita Verde manufactured home and mobile home park model community to the north. And then also the fact that there was the Muirlands single-family residential PAD to the east. Welcome, Fred. Looks like Commissioner Tucker joined. So there was some
Thank you, sir.
there was some sensitivity to the fact that the PAD to the east had called for some single-family homes relatively close to this uncamouflaged cell tower. But since that time, there was actually a PAD amendment that replaced 10 acres of that land use and replaced it with, instead of a single-family use, there is now an approval for basically a church and childhood education center. It's not yet been constructed, but the fact that there's a non-residential use proposed adjacent to that cell tower does help reduce the need to have additional screening methods taken on that wireless facility. When reviewing conditional use permits, there's a set of criteria that have to be evaluated. And I'm going to go over the two primary ones, although all of them have been addressed in the staff report. The first criteria I want to talk about is that the site for the proposed use is adequate in size and topography to accommodate the use, and that basically the site features are adequate to properly relate with the land and uses in the vicinity. Although this is an uncamouflaged tower, it does sit 270 feet away from the eastern boundary of the Cactus Middle School site, and it sits 80 feet to the south of the Casa Verde and Casita Verde RV and manufactured home park. It does meet the development standards in that there's basically a 1 foot of setback per foot of height ratio. And so at 80 feet in height, it's exactly meets the minimum setback from the north property line. There is an existing condition that's going to carry over with this conditional use permit if approved, and that's essentially the equipment area is to be screened by an 8-foot masonry wall, which it already is, but it continues that condition into the future. The other criteria that I want to talk about is that the conditions stated in the approval are deemed necessary to protect the public health, safety, and general welfare. So as part of conditional use permits, there's also a resolution that ultimately gets signed by the applicant and owner and gets recorded. And on that resolution, there are specific conditions. And so these conditions are what helps ensure that the site remains as compatible as possible. Specifically, it does talk about the lease area to continue to be screened by an 8-foot-high CMU wall. The other item that I should mention is that although the tower is uncamouflaged, it's a sky gray color, so it does help somewhat blend in to the sky. And so the condition number 5 just ensures that it maintains that type of color. And then there's some additional other conditions that are fairly standard with wireless telecommunication facilities. As far as the public notification process goes, it did meet the city requirements. There were no comments received as part of the public notification effort. This was approved once before in 2015, so basically what this does is it just eliminates the expiration date and it would now run with the land. So planning staff does recommend that commission approve this conditional use permit and its associated resolution with the conditions stated in the resolution. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, I'm cutting in now, Mr. Gagliardi. Was that all?
Yes, sir.
Okay, would the commission have any questions for Mr. Gagliardi?
None.
No.
Okay, without any questions, if we could have the applicant or the representative step forward and give us a presentation.
Commissioner McBride, I did hear from the applicant.
And when you get up there, if you could give us your name. Go ahead, sir.
I apologize. I could tell by the Pledge of Allegiance that there was a little bit of a delay. The applicant did contact me a few days ago, and she advised that she would not be attending due to where her office was located, and there were some travel concerns.
All right, thank you very much, sir. Is there any questions or any information from the public that would like to come up and say something?
There are none.
None? Okay, thank you very much. I'll bring this back to the commission then. Is any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve.
Lacking any discussion would, yes.
Mr. Chairman, I move to make a motion to approve DSAA-20-000068, conditional use permit for the towers.
Okay, Mr. Tice, I'm actually having some issues getting all the information. It's saying internet's unstable where I'm at. I believe, we have a motion to approve it. Is there a second?
I second.
Mr. Chairman, this is David Snyder, and I will second the motion if the mover of the motion includes the conditions listed in the staff report.
So moved.
And I would also just specify, if you don't mind, that that does indeed include the resolution.
So moved.
Thank you.
Seconder agrees.
Are we ready to call roll?
Okay.
Members-
Yes, call roll, please.
Member Estrada?
Yes.
Member Snyder?
Aye.
Member Anderson?
Yes.
Member Dugan?
Yes.
Member Tucker? Member Tucker? Vice Chairman McBride?
Yes.
Okay, I believe Member Tucker's here, but. Member Tucker, can you hear me?
I'll ask to unmute.
Okay.
It is doing.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Yes.
My answer is yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so it appears it has passed. And we'd like to thank the people if they were here. Mr. Tice, I'd have just a word with you for just a second. I don't think I'm gonna be able to do justice to the presentations tonight because I'm skipping in and out of this continually. I'm missing a lot of the information. I can follow along here if someone else would be so kind as to bring the things up.
Stand in for you as much as I can, and then you can just interject where you need to. How does that sound?
Sounds good to me.
Thank you very much.
Okay, with that, then, we will move on to our next agenda item. That would be agenda item number 2. It's a request by Richmond American Homes, for the following land use approvals for Valago Parcel 15, an area northwest corner of McCartney and Casa Grande Avenue. The first item is housing product entailing the submittal of 5 single-story floor plans, each with 3 elevations and multiple color schemes, ranging from 1,597 square feet to 2,096 square feet. This request is for the remaining 77 lots within Valago Parcel 15. The second request is a conditional use permit for a model home complex to include 2 model homes, one with a sales office and a temporary off-street parking area. Said complex is to be upon lots 15, 16, and 17 in Valago Parcel 15. And James Gagliardi is the planner.
Right, as this item was introduced, this does involve new homes within Valago Parcel 15. To give everyone an idea of where that is it's a 135 lot parcel sitting just west of Casa Grande Avenue and north of McCartney Road in the Valago neighborhood. In this parcel, the minimum lot size is 6,000 square feet and the minimum lot width is 50 feet. Richmond Homes has purchased the 77 remaining vacant lots, and they're proposing to construct upon them 5 different floor plans, each with 3 elevations. The 5 floor plans range from just shy of 1,600 square feet to just over 2,000 square feet. All 5 plans are single story. Additionally, they're proposing a model home complex featuring 2 of those homes in order to help promote and build out that parcel. Now, there are some existing homes, of course, as you can see on the aerial. Fulton Homes first constructed within Parcel 15, and then followed by Beazer most recently. As far as the housing product is concerned, on the left side of the screen is an overview of the 5 different plans proposed. The 3 various elevations range from the Spanish architectural finish to ranch style, which is in the middle, and then a cottage style on the right. And then also on the right side of the screen, you'll notice the location of the proposed model home complex. It's right at the corner of Solar Way and Blossom Lane. There would be an off-street parking lot that would be temporary on the corner lot, and then there would be a model home with an office, followed by just a regular model home. When reviewing housing product, or the design review is also what that process is known as, there's particular design review criteria imparted within the Villago Planned Area Development Zone itself. And specifically within sections 3 and 4, it talks about floor plans and elevations requiring a certain number of floor plans and elevations, which is basically 5 floor plans and 3 elevations. It does ask for a minimum number of color schemes. It talks about front elevation emphasis, such as trim around the windows, and some of the models should have stone work, etc. And then there's another section that talks about requirements for concrete tile roofs, and there should be a variety of roof colors, shapes, and textures. And there's a requirement also for covered rear patios. There's additional criteria pertaining to garages. No garage shall extend past the livable area of the home or front porch by 10 feet. And also at least one elevation per parcel will have livable area of the home forward the garage. Richmond homes have, all of their 5 plans have livable area forward the garage. So it basically meets both those bullet points. And then there's also some additional requirements where 4 of the 6 additional requirements shall be met. Staff's determined that they are actually meeting 5 of the 6 requirements. One of the things that they are proposing that adds some creativity to the proposal is the fact that their driveways are proposed to be the pavers that you see towards the right side, bottom side of the screen. They also are proposing 3 different garage door styles. It is a neighborhood that started construction, I'm assuming, around 2005. And over time, there's been some areas that weren't fully completed by the developer or have since become depleted. And so basically, it would be Richmond's obligation to make certain improvements per the area's approved landscape plan. When you look at the approved wall plan, there's certain type walls that are supposed to be constructed adjacent to Four Seasons Lane and White Sands Lane, for example. And so essentially when that particular home goes to build, it would be the responsibility of Richmond to build that wall type. And then there's another type of wall identified in black on the screen. It's just basically a builder wall, but there's some specifications as to how that's to get constructed. And so they would have to be mindful of that. So because of that, there's particular conditions of approval that staff is recommending. Particularly, the front yard landscaping is to be installed by the builder and maintained by the homeowner within 30 days of the certificate of occupancy for the home. When they submit plot plans, they have to include specific detail to help ensure that there's no 2 homes next to each other of the same color or elevation. And then the third condition pertains to that requirement to construct the walls adjacent to the respective lots. Now regarding the conditional use permit, a conditional use permit is required for model home complexes. As I mentioned on a previous slide, this is at the corner of Solar Way and Blossom Lane. The 2,092 square foot home is going to be featured on the most northerly lot of the model home complex. And the sales parking lot, as I mentioned, is on the corner. And then the middle home will be where the sales office is located. It's the 1,727 square foot model of the cottage style design. When reviewing conditional use permits, there's particular criteria that have to be addressed, and the staff report goes into it in far more detail, but I just want to talk about the 2 highlighted items. The first item basically is that this conditional use permit will have no adverse effect upon the abutting property. As you see on the screen here, that where they're proposing the model home complex is in an area where there aren't presently existing homes. So traffic going into the neighborhood specifically to visit the model home complex can enter and exit without necessarily driving through the areas where there's already existing homes. And also, the other criteria that I want to talk about is that there's whatever conditions are imparted are what are deemed necessary to protect the public health, safety, and general welfare. Essentially, with model home complexes, the concern tends to be with signage. So there's particular conditions that requires them to submit for separate sign permitting. And then also this conditional use permit would be set to expire after 5 years or the sale of the Richmond lots, whichever happens first. And then anything that is making it a model home complex would have to be reverted back to where it can be either a sellable lot or a functional home. So for example, the sales office and the garage would have to be removed and a functioning garage would have to be put back into its place. These are just some other conditions that are fairly standard with model home complexes. Regarding the public notification process, there was mailed notice to the owners of property within 300 feet as well as the HOA. There was a sign posting and publication in the Casa Grande Dispatch. I did receive 2 inquiries. One was someone who had received a mailed notice. She wanted to see the product and didn't provide specific comments other than, just her sentiment about she was used to the empty lots and she had concern about no more views. To counter that, these are all single story, so that would help mitigate that concern. There was also an inquiry by a person who had seen the sign and just wanted to make a remark on that. So there's 2 recommendations. The first is for the housing product, and staff recommends approval of the housing product subject to the conditions that are in the staff report and what I've discussed this evening. And then I also recommend approval of the conditional use permit for the model home complex, subject to the resolution. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, James. Do any commissioners have questions for staff? Anyone on the line have any questions for staff? Okay, with that, we will open it up for the applicant and allow the applicant to come forward and make their comments. Is the applicant with us this evening? Please state your name and address for the record and then address the commission. Thank you.
All right. Good evening, Commissioners, Chairman. My name is Jake Nickel. My address is 4917 North 73rd Street in Scottsdale, Arizona. That is 85251. I work on the land team with Richard American Homes. We're excited to be down here once again, and I'm happy to answer any questions you guys got.
Any questions for the applicant from commissioners? Looks like not. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
At this point, we'll open up the public hearing to anyone in the public that would like to speak regarding this matter. Please come forward. 1 second, we're going to sanitize the mic for you and the podium. When you come forward, please give us your name, address, and then tell the commission whatever you want to speak about.
My name is David Zanizer, 491 East Dartmouth. The only comment I have about Richmond's project here is that area that's undeveloped has a lot of ground owls, the burrowing owls. There's a fair number of them out there in that field. I have friends that live there, and I go by there almost once a week. And I hope there's some effort made to relocate those owls somewhere where the tractors won't run over them. Thank you.
So let me address that comment real quick for the commissioners and other members of the audience. We do have, city planning does have a standard practice of working with an organization, and I believe it's Wild at Heart, to relocate any burrowing owls on any development sites. So We will work closely with them and have those owls relocated by the applicant to an appropriate habitat. Anyone else in the audience like to speak regarding this matter? So, Mr. Chair, since no one else is coming forward, I'm going to close the public hearing and bring it to the table for commission discussion or a motion.
Thank you very much. I'm back at it. I have nothing to add to it.
Mr. Chairman, if a motion is in order?
Just go right ahead, sir.
This is David Snyder, and I move to approve the housing product DSA 20-00082 for Valago Parcel 15, subject to the conditions as listed in the staff report.
I'll second that motion.
Have a motion, is there a second? Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Dugan, for the second. Is there any discussion? With no discussion, could I get a roll call vote, please, Linda?
Member Estrada?
Yes.
Member Snyder?
Aye.
Member Anderson?
Yes.
Member Dugan?
Yes.
Member Tucker? Member Tucker? Vice Chairman McBride?
Yes.
Member Tucker?
This is Member Tucker. Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yes, your vote is yes? Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Okay, then that will pass. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve DSA-20-00090 conditional use permit with also recommendations from the staff.
A second.
Thank you very much, sir. Is there a second on that?
Estrada, second.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Linda, could you please take a roll call, please?
Member Estrada?
Yes.
Member Snyder?
Aye.
Member Anderson?
Yes.
Member Dugan?
Yes.
Member Tucker?
Yes.
Vice Chairman McBride?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, seeing that all voted yes, that has passed. And I'd like to thank the applicant for coming down and showing their time. And we'll move on to public hearing and consideration of a request by Jim Kaiser of Land Development Consultants LLC on behalf of Circle K Stores for the following land use approval, land associated with the Circle K at Pottybomb in Florence and a
Mr.
parcel to the east,
Mr. Vice Chair, if I-
otherwise known as, I'm sorry, go ahead.
if I could interrupt you, we're actually on agenda item 3, not 4. You were reading agenda item 4.
Oh, did I?
Yeah,
Oh,
we have another Richmond,
sorry.
another Richmond American item.
okay. It's hard to be organized in the car. Sorry about that. Let me get back to that one. But it is wonderful up here in Overgard, believe me.
Would you like me to read,
Okay.
would you like me to read that
I've got
item
you.
into the record for you?
I've got it, sir. Thank you very much, though, for asking.
Okay.
A public hearing and consideration of a request by Richmond American Homes for housing product. Is that the one?
No.
Yes, yes,
It's
sir.
an application for design review approval for five single-story floor plans, each with 3 elevations and multicolor schemes ranging from
We already did that.
1,693 square feet to 2,046 square feet within the 97 empty lots within McCartney Center parcel BB, GG, and HH, northwest of Frontier Street and Tucker Street. And Mr. Gagliardi, would you like to present that for us?
Certainly. Thank you, Chairman McBride.
Enjoy yourself.
So a little history about McCartney Center, and particularly these three parcels. Parcels BB, GG, and HH have a total of 130 lots. The minimum lot sizes in this area are 80 feet wide by 115 feet deep. So the minimum lot size therefore is 9,200 square feet. Palacia Homes constructed 33 houses within parcels BB and GG in 2005. At that time, Planning Commission had approved 5 floor plans ranging from 2,168 square feet to 4,308 square feet. 97 lots have remained vacant. And parcel HH in the middle, just wanted to point out that there are no homes in that parcel. Here's a typical of 2 of the floor plans, or the elevation style of 2 of the floor plans that had been approved from Palacia. There's 3 other floor plans with 3 different elevations per plan throughout that McCartney Center community there. So today, the request from Richmond American Homes, who has required the 97 remaining lots, are requesting approval for 5 floor plans, each with 3 elevations, multiple color schemes, ranging from 1,693 square feet to 2,046 square feet. 3 of the 5 plans are 35 feet wide. However, they have models that would include an option for an additional 3rd car garage, so it would expand the width of the home. And 2 of the 5 plans are 50 feet wide, and this includes an RV garage. All plans are single story. Here's an overview of the plans that they're proposing with the 3 different elevation styles. As you see, the bottom 2 rows are those plans that also include the RV garage. And I also wanted to show you on this screen basically a typical of what an option would look like should there be a 3rd garage added to one of the 35-foot wide plans. In addition to the submittal, they provided landscape packages, driveway pavers, and 3 different garage styles. And they also provided multiple color schemes. There was a concern, though, with the fact that the McCartney Center neighborhood has a maximum light reflectivity value of the body color of the house at 50%. There's 5 color schemes that propose a body color that exceed that light reflectivity value. So one of the recommended conditions is that they swap those 5 body colors out with a compatible color that meets that LRV requirement, or they're welcome to eliminate them because they still exceed the maximum number of colors, or minimum number of color schemes, I should say. When reviewing housing product, there's specific criteria that has to be addressed, and it largely comes from the neighborhood's design requirements itself. So McCartney Center is in a planned area development zone, and it speaks to different requirements, but it also relates to what's known as the 1999 residential design standards for planned area developments. So essentially, there's a minimum requirement for 4 home plans, each with 3 elevations. Richmond provided 5. A minimum of 3 color schemes, which they're far exceeding. There shall not be any more than 2 consecutive similar front home elevations. And then there's some specific requirements about having similar rear home elevations for homes that back onto an arterial or a collector roadway. So in this case, it would be just Frontier Street, which is considered a collector. In addition, there's 6 items that of the 6, they have to address 4. Staff's found that they are meeting 4 of the 6, which it basically includes providing a variety of durable exterior materials and finishes. On one of the elevations, it has stonework. On another elevation, they've provided shutters and some specific detail with the ledging around the windows that are different from the other 2 elevation styles. And then on one of the elevations, they've provided shutters and other specific architectural details to help make each elevation distinct. When reviewing the condition of the 3 parcels, staff had made a couple of observations. One, along the north boundary of the lots in GG and HH, there's supposed to be a view fence per the landscape plan. Actually, there's also supposed to be a view fence in parcel BB, but there is not. It's a solid fence. Staff would be supportive of a solid fence to be put in place of the view fence because the planned land use to the north is unknown. And so there's some concern about having a view fence be open to something that might not be desired to be viewed in the future. So we're okay with a solid fence. However, they would have to modify the landscape plan, which is an administrative considered application, or they could construct the view fence per the approved landscape plans. I neglected to put in the staff report, and so it's a modified condition for this evening, that also in parcel HH, there's no street lights. That would also be a requirement. They can work on the fencing and they can work on the street lights while they get building permits. However, they'd have to provide financial assurance if they wanted to do that, and then they would be allowed to get building permits and actually certificate of occupancy as long as we have financial assurance or those improvements have been put in. As far as the notification process goes, the public notice met the city code requirements. And staff did receive 1 inquiry. It was a gentleman in parcel BB who received the mailing. His concerns were just that he pointed out that the homes in those parcels are quite a lot larger than what Richmond is proposing. And there is quite a difference in the size. However, per the residential design standards and specifically within the McCartney planned area development zone, there's no specific requirement regarding minimum house size. And so there is not an ability to review the housing product based on that. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission approve the housing product for McCartney Center for parcels BB, GG, and HH, subject to the conditions that are in the staff report, and then what I articulated this evening regarding the street lights in parcel HH, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I have none.
Mr. Chair, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Okay, Mr. Tice, I'm going to turn it back over to you. It looks like that I'm skipping in and out again.
Okay, sir. Do any of the commissioners have questions of staff? Hearing none, we'll open it up and ask the applicant to come forward.
All right, good evening, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. My name is Jake Nickel. I live at 4917 North 73rd Street in Scottsdale, Arizona, 85251. Like I said earlier, I work on the land team at Rich American Homes. I'd love to answer any questions you guys have. I will make a few points. For the color schemes that we were over that 50% threshold, we will be replacing those schemes, not just eliminating them. That way we keep 6 per elevation. We don't want to lose one of those guys. And then also, we're in full support of installing the streetlights within that parcel that's missing them. So we'll go through, work with James on that, make sure that gets taken care of, as well as the view fencing. We're gonna work on that as well, and make sure we get that covered as well. But I can answer any questions you guys have.
Commissioners, have any questions of the applicant? Mr. Dugan?
I noticed the other home builder that was there previous. Here we go. The other home builders that was there previous, the lots are a lot bigger and the homes were a lot bigger. So your houses are considerably smaller than the existing homes, and there's nobody's from the areas seem to be too concerned. What's the price range of your homes starting and go from there? I'm just curious.
Yeah, sure. Mr. Commissioner, it's going to be within the 200,000 range. So starting at the low 2s all the way to the high 2s. We're gonna try as best as we can to not have it creep into the 3s. And if we can offer them as low as the high 1s, we'll do that as well. So that's what we're aiming for. Obviously, prices may change as we get closer to when sales will begin, but that's our outlook and that's what we're projecting right now.
So it's basically starter houses, basically.
Yep.
Yep.
Correct. Yep.
Okay, thanks.
Are there any other questions for the applicant from the commissioner? Okay, thank you, sir.
None for me.
All right, thank you, Mr. McBride.
Thank you.
So with that, I'll open the public hearing for any member of the public that would like to address the commission regarding this item. Come forward, sir. Give us your name and address for the record.
I live at 1751 East Brandon Drive. We have presently no RV vehicles in the setup, and our HOA does not require it. We have no RVs. Those houses, they don't. We're 2,200 feet to 4,000 feet, and the houses they're proposing, they're going to run down the neighborhood. And the houses that have the RV things, I don't want people to park the RV and the house alongside to put up with it. And the people, the garages are small, the houses are small, the cars are going to sit out in front, and the RV is going to sit out in front. And I think it's going to bring down the neighborhood. I mean, these houses are probably going to be 220,000, maybe 230,000. Our houses are like 4,200 feet, and these houses aren't nice looking. I think they ought to do something about the architecture.
James, would you bring up the map of the 3 parcels? And sir, you live in parcel BB on the screen, BB? Is that where you live?
I live in BB.
BB, thank you. Are there any, does the commission have any questions for the speaker?
I mean, our HOA, there's no RV vehicles. And if RV vehicles, it's going to be disaster. Maybe they can keep, if you guys approve it, maybe they can keep the RV vehicles to the north and just one section.
So let me ask you this. Are you saying the HOA does not allow RVs?
The HOA does not allow RVs. We have no RVs.
Regardless of who moves in there, they wouldn't be able to bring the RVs in, correct?
Pardon?
Regardless of who moves in, they will not be able to bring in the RVs, correct?
Right.
Okay.
I mean, I think these houses are too small for the lots.
Well, they would have to abide by the HOA rules, and if no RVs are allowed,
No RVs allowed.
I think you're safe.
I don't know, I don't know what, I don't know if our president was, he should come to those meetings, and I don't know, the HOA should be present too.
So a couple points. of
We are restricted, I had trouble, changing my color and everything, the houses and the HOA is, you know, I mean, we have strict rules in that neighborhood. So I don't think it's a good idea to allow these houses to be put up.
Thank you, sir.
It's not, they're not big enough.
Thank you. So a couple points of clarification for the commission. The CCNRs, the CCNRs for McCartney Center they prohibit the outside storage and parking of RVs. So you could not park them in the street or in the drive, or even in the side yards if they're visible. They don't prohibit them parking inside garages. The city code itself does prohibit also the parking of RVs in the street or in the front yards, in the driveways. So it would be a violation of city code as well if the RVs were parked in the driveways or in the streets, just for a point of clarification.
Will these new homes then have a different HOA?
No, they would be part of the existing HOA and CCNRs.
So if they don't allow motorhomes in there now in the houses, how come they can put?
You could park them in the garage, not in the driveway or in the yard or the street. Okay, any other speakers, any other public would like to speak on this item? Here's another one coming forward for us. Please just give us your name and address for the record.
My name is Trent. I live at 2954 North Taylor Lane, which is inside of Area BB. I have a concern also about the size of the homes. When I purchased my home in 2005, mine is one of the smaller floor plans. All of the models that were listed at that time had a minimum of 3-car garages or a 4th-car garage. The square footage for the smallest home at that point, again, was 2,100 square feet, with the largest being 4,000 square feet, approximately. The size of the lots are a lot bigger on that section of BB, HH, and GG than are in the sections to the south of it, where you have much smaller homes on the south side where they're being built right currently. I feel that the homes that they are proposing to build are too small compared to the rest of the homes in the current neighborhood, and that the 3-car garages that may be available on the 2,000 square feet still is much, the home is considerably smaller than the next smallest home. There are many 2-story homes in that neighborhood. Most of the single-story homes are still 2,200 to 2,700 square feet with 3-car garages. They have a minimum of 4 bedrooms. My floor plan started as a 4-bedroom, 3-car garage. At time of purchase, I bought a spec home at that time. The 3rd-car garage was turned into a 5th bedroom. So as the smallest floor plan originally with 2,100 square feet is now over 2,200 square feet with a double garage. I don't feel that these homes are indicative to what is already built and will not match what is already there. And as a person who lives in the neighborhood, I find that this is not something that I want to happen. I have no problem with Richmond American Homes. I would request that they submit a new plan with homes that better fit the square footage of the lot size and the homes that are already built in the neighborhood.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the commission of the speaker? Anyone on the line have any questions? Thank you, ma'am. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on this item? James, do we have the commissioners unmuted?
They
One
have
second.
the option to unmute themselves.
Okay, great, thank you. Give us your name and address of the record.
Good evening, Commissioners, and those that are not present. John McGuire, 1748 North St. Francis Place. I'm mainly speaking up on this item because I have on all the previous times this same issue has come up. As Mr. Gaguar has stated, there are some guidelines that you cannot consider. Housing size is being one of them. Richmond American is proposing houses that are meeting all the requirements for this planned area development as it stands now. And we've been through this with Villago and a couple of others in town. And I think the Villago development looks great now, that it's all built out. Those houses that I've been following, and I follow this pretty closely, as you all know, have not lost any significant value. And as a matter of fact, I think they've just increased value. And the fact of the matter is that we could be decades before we're supporting a market of 4,000 square foot houses in Casa Grande again. And the landowner has the rights to good use of his land. Richmond American has purchased that now. And again, we've been through this, and I have not seen any negative impacts from the times when this same issue has come up in the past. So I'm a believer in getting these houses built rather than empty lots. I know that's not a popular decision or choice with some people that come before the commission, but I do like to get the other side out here every time this issue comes up. So thank you very much.
Any questions from the speaker? Okay. Anyone else like to speak on this item? Seeing no one, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing, Mr. Chair, and see if commissioners would like to make a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to pass Housing Product DSA 20-00092 for McCartney Center, parcels BB, GG, HA, subject to the following conditions set by the staff.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
Second, Member Tucker.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? All right, none hearing none, we'll ask for a roll call vote.
Member Estrada? Member Snyder?
Aye.
Member Anderson? Member Anderson? Member Dugan?
Yes.
Member Tucker?
Yes.
Vice Chairman McBride? Vice Chairman McBride? Member Anderson, can you hear me? Are you showing him muted?
I don't see either mute or unmute.
No. Vice Chairman McBride?
I don't see McBride on unless he's.
Well, it looks like McBride lost his connection. Member Anderson, can you hear me?
How many have voted?
Okay, so we have 4 yes votes. So that motion would pass. All right, we'll go on to the next public hearing item. I'll go ahead and read it into the record. It's agenda item number 4. Public hearing and consideration of a request by Land Development Consultants on behalf of Circle K Stores for preliminary replat consisting of a lot for Circle K and 2 lots for future development for land associated with the Circle K at Pottobomb and Florence, and a parcel to the east, otherwise known as 1425 East Florence Boulevard. James Gagliardi is the planner.
Thank you. So a little history about the development of this area. The property reflected in this proposed replat consists of portions of both a 1926 plat known as the Moeller-Sellers Unit 1, identified as the Denton tract on the left, and also a replat of a portion of that 1926 plat approved in 2018, and it was known as the southeast corner of Potabom and Florence Boulevard subdivision. The 2018 approval basically looked like this. It was a two-lot plat. Lot 1 is the area south of the Circle K that has now been developed as a preschool, and Lot 2 is a currently undeveloped lot that lies to the east of Circle K. Circle K was not a part of that replat. However, what this proposal is this evening is to incorporate the Circle K parcel into the plat, and what's driving it is they're requesting to expand their lot by 25 feet, so it expands into the area that had previously been replatted in 2018. As part of this request, they're taking what was Lot 2 and they're creating two lots. The bulk of what was Lot 2 will now lie to the south, where there's a flag stem that extends up to the north, as you see identified on the screen. And what would be now considered the remnant of that Lot 2 is now proposed as Lot 3. There's specific development proposed on Lot 3, and that's actually going to be another presentation coming up this evening for a proposed Firestone tire shop. Respectively, the Circle K parcel is just over 2 acres. The proposed Firestone parcel, which would be known as Lot 3, is 1¼ acres. And no development is proposed at this time for what will be known as Lot 2, but it's 2½ acres. As part of both what was the 2018 plat approval and what's being proposed with this, and just worthy of pointing out, is there is a sewer easement that extends across the parcels to the south, and there is an access easement that goes across the preschool parcel that connects to the proposed Lot 2. When reviewing preliminary plats, staff has to look at what we know as review for adequacy. Are the parcels that are proposed, are they able to accommodate development? And so we look at a number of things: conformance with zoning, because there's particular development standards that pertain to that, the ability to manage developed and historic flows, the utility placement and ensuring that there can be access to such. And speaking of access, also we look at access or adequacy of connection to public roads or whatever other necessary easements would be suitable for that development. So in terms of the conformance with the zoning, this is proposed B2, or this is zoned rather, I'm sorry, B2, which is our general business zone district. There is no set minimum lot area. However, it's to be determined by the building area, parking requirements, and required setbacks. In this case, when you go to develop on a B2 lot, you have to meet a 35-foot front setback, a 15-foot rear setback, and your side setbacks can be an aggregate total of 15. So you could have 0 on one side, 15 on another, or 10 and 5, any combination that you choose. There is a requirement to have a minimum lot width of 150 feet. The other aspect that we look at is the drainage and management of developed and historic flows. So there was new drainage analysis provided with this pre-plat. And it did acknowledge that the conveyance of historic flows through the site has been minimal. However, at the time of major site plan, there will be further evaluation, and it'll determine what type of retention is necessary to retain any sort of developed flows. Regarding utilities, there is no certificate of assured water supply required through the Arizona Department of Water Resources. That would be required if you were proposing 6 or more lots. However, they're not proposing 6. It's essentially a new 3-lot replat. And then at the time of major site plan development, there would be further analysis regarding utilities. However, the bulk of the utilities are existing on Florence Boulevard, as well as there being a public sewer line in the adjacent preschool lot to the west. And the proposed plat establishes new utility easements to ensure adequate service to the lots. This graphically conveys that detail a little bit more clear. As you see, there is a water line parallel to Florence Boulevard along the front of the lots. There's a sewer/sewer easement to the south, and it's proposed to branch off into Lot 3. And there's also a public utility easement for any sort of future necessary connections. The last criteria is the access to and adequacy of public roads and other easements. So this subdivision is relying upon an existing drive access to provide ingress and egress to Florence Boulevard for all 3 lots. There's also an existing access easement in place for future alternative access to and from Potabom across development for Lot 2. So I'll just go back to that screen real quick to show you. On proposed Lot 2 to the south, that gray line that extends to the west that reaches out to Potabom is an access easement. Oh, and lo and behold, I had a better graphic here that showed that. Regarding the public notification, it did meet city notification requirements. As a result of the public notification, I did hear from Jackie Guthrie, who is representing Warren Funeral Services. There were a list of concerns primarily regarding the Florence Boulevard drive access, in that it is designed to accommodate future traffic for all 3 lots and of course, the existing traffic for Circle K. There was concern that it places too much traffic on to get in and out of that one access on Florence, and it creates conflict with the existing driveway at the Warren Funeral Services, which is older and more established. There's some further discussion regarding those comments with the Firestone major site plan as well. So to graphically demonstrate that concern is the existing drive access for the 3-lot plat is identified in green, and it would serve all 3 lots, the Circle K lot, the Firestone lot to the east, and the future lot to the south. The Warren drive access is identified in yellow. I just want to do a quick overview of the next steps should the Planning and Zoning Commission approve this preliminary replat. What would have to happen next is a final replat would have to go in front of City Council for approval. And then upon developing any of those parcels, we would have to look at a major site plan, which actually Firestone will be in front of you next for its major site plan. Should that be approved, then there's a site development permit that gets reviewed. And then the future lot to the south would have to go through the same process, where there would be further review of drainage and utility reports, including a TIA for traffic, to evaluate future impacts on that lot that has not yet been proposed for any sort of development. Staff recommends that Planning Commission approve DSA 20-00049, the preliminary replat for Circle K and Firestone. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Do any of the commissioners have questions
Hi,
for
Jim.
staff?
This is Fred. Can you hear me?
Yes.
A couple questions. You showed one of the entrances being for that Firestone, the same entrance as the J. Warren Funeral Service. Is that a publicly maintained road, the entrance to J. Warren Funeral Services?
Commissioner Tucker, so it's not the same access. There is an access for the Warren Funeral Services on the right. The property boundary for the plat shares the western property boundary of the Warren Funeral Service homes, but that's not where their drive access is. For this development, for Circle K and Firestone, that's to the left identified in green.
Okay. And my next question is this one irrelevant if we don't approve the Firestone thing? And should we be looking at the Firestone prior to approving this?
Chairman Tucker, the fact that this is an existing platted development that now entails proposing a new parcel specifically to accommodate development, the order of things would suggest that this should go first, because the platting sets the lots and whether or not it could accommodate development appropriate for that lot. Once the pre-plat is approved, we can consider the next step of development, which would be the specific site layout and design for that proposed parcel.
Okay, my last question would be targeted towards Dwayne. I was out at the Circle K area earlier this week, and it took 3 red lights or 3 green lights before you could make a right-hand turn out of Warren's, which is the only way that you can make a right-hand turn, due to the fact that you have the green light, so you have the people coming off of the green light. Circle K's backing up to make a right-hand turn right there. So when the green light stops, you have enough backup at Circle K that it's green again before they get out. So the people trying to get out of J. Warren's you might have to wait 2 or 3 green lights to get out. And that distance between the two, I'm not exactly what it is, but it seems extremely short compared to the other separation between egress and egress on Florence Boulevard. What would your stance be on that?
This is Dwayne. You're asking me that question?
Yeah, you're the traffic engineer. Yes.
Well, one good thing about the Warren funeral is that they do have another access down on here. So when we were first looking at this, that was one of the things we took into consideration, that this isn't their only way in and out.
In your opinion, the distance between those 2 exits is appropriate to add even more traffic to?
Well, one thing about the Firestone, it adds very little traffic to the area. A tire store is a real low traffic generator. It's like 10 cars in the peak hour in the morning and about the same in the peak hour in the evening, and very few cars going in and out all day. So I don't really think the Firestone is going to contribute a huge amount to the issue.
Thank you for your input.
Are there any other questions from the commission for staff?
Mr. Chairman, this is David Snyder. And I have a follow-up question from Commissioner Tucker's question to Mr. I have to tell you that simply saying Warren Funeral Services has another way to get in is not, in my opinion, not the easiest and simplest of answers, because anybody who has traveled on Pier knows that it can be a very confusing stretch of entrances and exits from the shopping center with Starbucks to the veterinary center to the optical medical center, and then to Jay Warren. That is a very, and plus there's a center barrier, as you can see on this particular graphic. I think that attention ought to be paid to that Jay Warren entrance onto Florence Boulevard, because it does offer a viable alternative. But to Commissioner Tucker's point, traffic coming in off of Florence Boulevard now or in the near future is going to have to compete with people going in and out of Circle K and then the tire place. And I'm not sure that that's safe.
Commissioner Snyder, is that a question or a statement?
A little bit of both. I would invite Mr. Itel to make me feel better about that.
Can I ask a question?
Well, again, if we're just looking at Firestone, if we're just looking at the Firestone store, it's really not contributing a huge amount to the issue.
I don't, this is Member Tucker, I don't know where you're getting your numbers, but just being an active clientele of other tire distributors on Florence Boulevard, if they were only doing 20 vehicles a day, I don't think they'd stay in business long, because that doesn't seem, I think they're doing more like 20 vehicles an hour with traffic from the ones that I tend to visit. And I have more vehicles than I should, so I visit them more often than I'd like to. But that seems like an extremely low number.
No, you're right. What I said was there's 10 at the peak hour in the morning. For the whole day, there's a little over 100. So that's still not a huge amount of traffic. Not enough traffic to require a traffic impact analysis. Although we did have them do a traffic statement.
Okay, I believe Commissioner Dugan has a question.
I see you got a recess lane going into the Circle K store, so you only got about 300 or 400 feet. Why don't you continue the all the way to the funeral parlor, and that would solve a lot of congestion. And you only got that, so make whoever the Firestone wants to get in there, put that recess lane all the way to the mortuary turn in, and that would help traffic flow.
Well, there are safety issues with having two right turns in a right turn lane. So somebody will somebody will want to come out of the funeral home driveway thinking somebody's turning right into Circle K, and they're really turning right into the funeral home. So we're trying to not allow two driveways in a right turn lane.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, Mr. Itel, I would invite you to take a look at just this kind of situation that exists from Camina Mercado to the Cracker Barrel gas station turn-in off of Florence Boulevard, where you've got Popeye, you've got Dutch Brothers, another fast food place, and then the entrance to Cracker Barrel, the gas station, and Cottonwood and the Cottonwood Medical Complex there. So we've already done it, and a lot of people use it, and as far as I know, it's pretty safe.
Okay, do we have any commissioners, any other commissioners have questions of staff? If not, we'll allow the applicant to come forward and present their information. Please give us your name.
Hi, I'm Jill Kaiser with Land Development Consultants on behalf of Circle K. Address is 10201 North 56th Street, Paradise Valley, Arizona. I really don't have anything else to present other than what Jim did an amazing job on for the plat. Circle K is interested in expanding their parking by 25 feet to the east, and in doing that, town is requiring us to replat. The driveways are already in existence, and there's nothing new that we're adding in that regard. And this application is for the replat to expand into our parking.
Are there any questions from the commission of the applicant? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So we'll open the public hearing and see if there's anyone else that would like to address the commission on this item.
Mr. Chairman, out there in video land, and planning commissioners, for the record, my name is Jackie Guthrie, 3860 North Pinal Avenue, Casa Grande, 85122. And I am here tonight representing Janet and Jerry Warren with Warren Funeral Services. I was going to address the next item, which was the site plan, but since we are already talking about the traffic issues, I thought it would come up at this time. The Warrens do have concerns with the turn lane and traffic coming out of Circle K, heading east on Florence Boulevard, and a conflict with traffic entering and exiting their driveway. So in terms of a little history, if you go back and look at Google Maps back to 2000, the Warrens' access has been there since 2002. That was pre-Lowe's across the street. That was pre-Circle K. They approached their neighbors to the east and the west to try to get them to participate in widening that driveway and having shared access, both east and west. The property owner to the east did participate. The property owner to the west, where Circle K and the Firestone is proposed, did not participate. So they went to ADOT in 2004 and got a permit from ADOT to increase their driveway from 30 feet wide to 36 feet wide to accommodate the median and the traffic north and south. So they've been there since 2004 is when ADOT approved that widening. Sometime in 2007, 2008, the access that is now providing access to Circle K and the 3 access points along Pottybomb were put in when that property was all vacant. So I'm assuming that must have been the city, because the state would not have been involved with Pottybomb access improvements. So they've been there first. They tried to get the access to Lowe's to line up with them. When Lowe's went in 2008, 2007, somewhere in that time frame, that didn't happen. So as we move down the road and they continue their business, having been, longtime business owners here in Casa Grande, each use just seems to compound what's happening out there. A couple of your commissioners suggested that the right turn lane perhaps be extended. Commissioner Snyder mentioned some of the properties down east on Florence Boulevard that have the same situation. Also north on Pinal, at McCartney and Pinal, heading south, where you have Walgreens, Burger King, and AutoZone. There too is one long right turn lane that services all 3 of those businesses. That's a fairly new development. It's not old school, and that seems to work as well. So we would ask the city to please take a closer look at this circulation, at perhaps a right turn. Maybe there's another solution that a traffic engineer could suggest, but we do think something needs to be done at this area to prevent traffic conflicts that we see today. When Plum Plaza PAD was approved, and I don't remember the exact year when that was done, but if you read the Plum Plaza PAD, it specifies that processionals for funerals will come in on Florence Boulevard and turn right into the facility. The access on Peart is really a secondary access. If you enter on Peart, what you see are refuse containers and hearses. I mean, that is not their front door, that is their back door. So to suggest that just because they have a back door, that it replaces their front entrance, I don't think is legitimate, because that's not where you want your processionals coming in. So that is our request, is that the city take a closer look at that circulation on Florence Boulevard to improve the situation.
Thank you. Do the commissioners have any questions of the speaker?
Yeah,
Alright.
Jackie, this is Member Tucker. Do you have any problem with this, the way that this is platted? Would your concerns be on the next issue or on this one?
I don't have any issues with the replat itself, but because we were already talking about circulation, felt this was an appropriate time to address it.
Thank you.
Any other questions of the speaker?
Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to come forward and speak? Hang on, we're going to sterilize the podium for you there, Mr. McGuire.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, John McGuire from St. Francis Place again. I think Commissioner Tucker was just hitting on my issues here. I think we have to sort of separate this out. I'm a big supporter in Circle K's request to widen their parking lot and get some additional parking in there. Anytime you go into that store right now, because it's getting so much busier than I think even they anticipated, it can be quite crazy with people backing up and going all different directions and coming in and out, and it just makes everybody more frustrated, which probably contributes to some of the safety issues coming back out onto Florence Boulevard. So I think they need to be discussed in two separate issues. The plat of this lot is a request from Circle K, regardless of what happens next. If you do not approve the next item, this item still can be approved, and then some other use considering could go into that other lot if you don't like the next one. I don't necessarily agree with everything Jackie says, which is very rare because we're pretty much on the same page most of the time. But I think that for now you have to separate the two issues between the major site plan and the plat issue that's in front of you currently.
Thank you. Any questions of the speaker? Thank you. Anyone else like to address the commission on this particular item? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. And Mr. Vice Chair, we're at the table for a motion.
I'd like to make a motion. To pass, Planning Commission approve the preliminary plat of BSA 20-00049, Circle K and Firestone at Florence Boulevard and Potabom Road, re-subdivision of portions of the previous plats.
So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it, Member Tucker.
Thank you, Member Tucker. Motion and a second. Is there a discussion on the motion? Hearing none, we can take a roll call vote.
Member Estrada?
Yes.
Member Snyder? Member Snyder? Yes, okay. Member Anderson? Member Dugan?
No.
Member Tucker,
Yes.
Vice Chairman McBride. I think we lost him. Member Anderson, can you hear me? She's on, she's just not answering somehow.
Okay, so here's where we're at until we hear from Member Anderson. We have 3 yeses, 1 no, and we have 5 members participating in the meeting. So the motion would pass on a 3 vote because it's a quorum of the meeting. But let's see if Commissioner Anderson is able to participate.
Member Anderson?
Okay. Let me also ask our city attorney, who I know is monitoring the meeting, if I'm correct that with the 3 yes votes and 1 no vote, that the motion passes. Mark, can you weigh in on that question for us, please?
Are we on mute or something? Because
No, it's okay.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now, Mark.
Okay, I guess I'll have to go through with the computer. Yeah, so if we have 5 members, then 3 would pass. Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate that. All right, then, motion passes to approve the preliminary plat, and it takes us to our next agenda item. Agenda item number 5. It's a public hearing and consideration of a request by CEI Engineering and Associates on behalf of CG6 LLC, care of Insight Land and Investments, for the following land use approvals for land east of Circle K at Florence and Potabom, otherwise known as 1425 East Florence Boulevard. First item is a conditional use permit to allow tire sales, mounting, and repair business where such use is a conditional use within the B2 General Business Zone. The second request is a major site plan for a new 6,262 square feet Firestone Complete Auto Care. And the third request is a final landscape plan for the Firestone development. James Gagliardi will be making the planning presentation.
Mr. Tice, before we begin, I did have a technical question.
Okay?
For conditional use permits, given that it doesn't look like we have Michael McBride and we're not able to hear from Tammy Anderson, is that subject to a higher threshold?
Let's have our city attorney weigh in. I believe that it is, but Mark, can you opine on the vote necessary for that?
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, for conditional use permits, it requires four affirmative votes, no matter how many members are voting. So if we only get 4 members to vote, then they all have to be yes.
Okay, thank you.
So that our code requires a majority of all voting members. So that would be 4. No matter how many vote, we have to have 4 yeses.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate that.
Thank you. So this is, there's basically 3 requests involved with Firestone's proposal. The first that we'll talk about is specifically the conditional use permit. What's proposed on this parcel is the development of Firestone. It's a 6,262 square foot building. The dimensions of it are approximately 50 feet wide by 130 feet long. They're proposing 7 service bays. The building up to the top of the parapet is 22 feet in height, and they're proposing 30 parking spaces. Because this is in a B2 zone district, tire sales and service is subject to the approval of a conditional use permit, but they are also proposing the major site plan, which is specifically for the siting of the building. It's the opportunity to look at the retention and landscape areas and ensuring everything complies with code. And the third request is the final landscape plan. This is in lieu of a preliminary landscape plan. Typically, that's associated with the major site plan approval, but when they want to skip that step, the final landscape plan shall be considered by Planning Commission separately. So as I mentioned, first we'll talk about the conditional use permit request specific to tire sales and service in the B2 zone. There's essentially 5 criteria that must be evaluated, and I'm going to just hit on a couple of those. The use of the existing driveway access on Florence versus constructing a new separate access along a minor arterial is something to consider. As you see with the site, they are proposing to use the existing driveway, and that would allow circulation from both Firestone on the east and Circle K to the west. They are proposing to address what would otherwise be known as compatibility concerns by providing landscaping around the perimeter. They're providing buffer on all 4 sides, as you see graphically displayed on the screen. There is 40% open space, whereas the minimum required in this B2 zone is 10%. They're particularly adding buffering to the east of the Firestone building, between the Firestone building and the property line. There's about a little over 15 feet provided there for additional screening. We know what the existing use is to the west of Circle K, but to the east we're more sensitive about future uses there. So it's spaced off of that property line to provide buffering. The other aspect that we look at with this criteria in terms of minimizing adverse impact is that all of the parking, the queuing lanes, the open bays are all directed away from more sensitive areas. As I mentioned, it's directed towards the existing convenience store, which includes a gas station and car wash, another auto-dominant use, as opposed to be oriented in such a way that it's exposed to a more sensitive area. As discussed on the previous presentation, there was concern over the distance between the Warren Funeral Services driveway and the driveway that was put in place with the development of Circle K. There is about a 170-foot distance. Another criteria to discuss is compliance with the general plan. So this area is within the community center land use designation of the 2020 general plan. One of the goals of the community center land use designation is to bring buildings closer to the roadway and minimize views of parking areas and promote walkability. Even though someone may not be walking to a tire shop per se, they might be if their vehicle is in getting new tires and they want to venture out on foot. Bringing the building closer and providing more pedestrian access helps promote that. Because there is a lot of sensitivity to the form in the community center land use designation in terms of trying to have it be a more pedestrian friendly, bring buildings closer to the street type concept, one of the conditions of approval of this conditional use permit is that the freestanding signage is limited to a detached monument-style sign that shall not exceed 15 feet in height. Taller signs aren't appropriate for this area because taller signs are usually meant to accommodate traffic traveling at a faster speed. And this area of the community center land use designation acknowledges that this is a more urban area. It's not necessarily designed for highway traffic, so 15 feet in height is the recommended maximum. And then another condition is that there shall be no outdoor storage. That graphic, I'm a little late to show that, but that pulls in their plan to extend the sidewalk. So there's the existing sidewalk on Florence Boulevard, and they're proposing to provide a connection to the building by wrapping it around the east side of the drive aisle, and then it parallels the public sidewalk on Florence and then accesses the Firestone. And then that is an image of the existing Circle K monument sign, which is also at 15 feet in height. Staff recommends that Planning Commission approve this conditional use permit and its associated resolution with the two following conditions that I discussed regarding the signage being limited to monument style of 15 feet and no outdoor storage. The other application that we're going to just transition into for you to consider all three applications at the end is the major site plan. With the major site plan, these are the following review criteria. A lot of these overlap with the criteria that we look at when considering a conditional use permit. So I'm specifically going to just talk about the elevations, the building location, and height. This was specifically an area of concern by one of the responses that we received from the public notice was the concern about the aesthetics of the building. So this building proposes a metal panel system along the west elevation. So that elevation that's facing Circle K will be a combination of red, gray, and white coloring. On the property's north elevation, so that which is parallel to Florence, as you see on the bottom, will be of a gray coloring with awnings. The side that has that's most concerning is the side that is known as the elevation that's facing east, facing towards Warren Funeral Services. There was concerns about this just being a stark looking building, especially as traffic is traveling west on Florence. You would see this elevation profile more than the other elevations. So in response to that concern, Firestone is proposing to do a wrap of the gray that comes from the north elevation around to that side of the building. And just a clearer example of what that metal paneling system looks like, they did provide a photo of an existing Firestone with that metal paneling system, as you see on the screen on the bottom left. It's a combination of both horizontal paneling, which would be on the front of the building, and the vertical paneling on the side. Another item that we look at when reviewing major site plans are meeting the minimum setbacks and maximum height. They are following all of that which is required. The maximum height in that zone district is 35 feet, but they're going to be at 22. So therefore, upon reviewing the various criteria and as discussed in the staff report, we do recommend that Planning Commission approve the major site plan. There is one condition associated with that, and it pertains to the rear retention basin. Essentially, at the time of site development permitting, that retention basin may have to be adjusted with fencing if the slopes exceed a certain depth. The last application pertaining to Firestone pertains to the final landscape plan. So when we look at landscape code, there's basically three aspects. There's street frontage landscaping, which calls for an average depth of 15 feet parallel to the street. And then there's on-site landscaping, and so that uses a ratio of a minimum of 2 trees and 5 shrubs for every 3 spaces. And then there's some specifics in terms of the landscaping variety, ensuring that there's a minimum ground cover met. There's specific desert-friendly vegetation called for. Upon reviewing the final landscape plan, we found that this landscape plan exceeds that which the code requires. So therefore, staff recommends that Planning Commission approve the final landscape plan. Regarding the public notice, as I alluded to, we did receive one comment, and it was from Jackie Guthrie representing Warren Funeral Services to the east. The primary concerns were the access, as previously have been discussed, and then also the aesthetics of the building. Staff recommends that Planning Commission approve the conditional use permit and associated resolution with the conditions as discussed. We also recommend approval of the major site plan with the condition as discussed, and we also recommend approval of the final landscape plan. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, James. Commission have any questions for staff?
I have one. From Walmart store to Pep Boys, that's about 1.5 miles. You have the Walmart store, the Discount Tire Store, Tire Pros, the Goodyear, and the Big O, and you have Pep Boys, so that's 6 tire stores. What were you thinking about adding another tire store to this area, which will bring in absolutely no more revenue to the city of Casa Grande, and there's not one tire store on Pinal Avenue? It doesn't make sense.
So Commissioner,
what's your thinking?
Commissioner Dugan,
Yes.
the role of the Planning Commission and city planning is not to control the market or determine what kind of businesses might survive or not survive, but simply to zone for uses and determine if that use is appropriate given its characteristics. So we cannot consider the market viability issue that you've just raised.
So you don't care what goes in there, so if you wanted to put something else there, you'd have to.
If the zoning allowed restaurants, you could build 5 restaurants next to one another, and the role of planning is not to control the market. It's to make sure that development is compatible, is a benefit to the city in terms of compatibility and other issues, but not market viability.
So what is the benefit of adding this to the city?
So we could ask that's certainly an appropriate question to ask, right? We could ask the applicant that question when they get to come up, okay? But market viability, not appropriate. Any other questions for staff by the commission?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Tice,
Yes, sir.
Member Snyder here. I have a couple of questions. And so I'd like to start with some issues having to do with fire code, and this is an issue. These issues are similar to the issues when we were looking at a tire place as a reuse on Cottonwood Avenue. So first of all, I heard Mr. Gagliardi, you said that there would be no outside tire storage, but presumably they will be storing tires indoors, and if so, could you speak to the fire code and the requirements on that?
Chairman Snyder, there's a couple things that I can speak to regarding that question. One, because of the building square footage, it will automatically require sprinkling per our fire code, because that's a requirement for buildings over 5,000 square feet. This building's about 6,000 square feet, so it would require sprinkling. But in addition to that, at the time of the building permit review, both the building department and fire department will look at the occupancy of the building. So with regard to the type of occupancy required for tire business, specifically the indoor storage of tires, they would have to meet specific fire code and building code criteria. So at that point, that's really not a function of what I would look at or what I would find suitable to specify as a condition, because it would naturally happen as part of the building permit review process.
Okay, if I may, with a follow-up. When last we looked at a new tire store operation, we made very clear to the applicant that we did not want any of the actual tire business, the mechanics of fixing and or replacing tires to take place anywhere other than inside the bays in the building. And I want to make sure that that is a similar condition that we look at with regard to the Firestone operation if it goes forward.
James, you want to address that issue?
So my response to that is that you're welcome to propose that as an added condition. My understanding is that it's a good point. There's a couple of factors that are a little bit different comparing this site with the last tire shop that was proposed. With the last tire shop that was proposed, it was utilizing an existing building, and it was basically trying to retrofit that business into a building that was not ever contemplated for a tire shop. So it was oriented in such a way where there could be more adverse impacts. But the particular layout of this building puts the bays in an area where it is situated in a way that's not immediately and right up next to the public view of Florence. So from my position, that's not as large of a concern. But if you'd like to recommend that as an added condition, you'd be welcome to.
Please understand that I would like to have that done and added as a condition. Can you also, as long as I've raised the issue of fire and fire code, can you talk to me about fire access? How much room do they have to get in and out?
So there's, Chairman Snyder, basically they currently would have 2 points of access. There's the access onto Florence Boulevard that you see on the screen. And then the other access that they could utilize is on the Circle K site, because there is a joint access agreement. When I say the Circle K site, that would be the access that is used to get onto Potabom. In the future, when the development occurs to the south, there would be another opportunity to go to Potabom. So ultimately, there would be 3 points of access.
So just for clarification, what you're saying is that if, God forbid, there's a blocked access off of Florence Boulevard, the fire department would have to come through Circle K in order to get to the business, to the Firestone business. Is that accurate?
Correct.
Sounds pretty scary to me. Also, if I may, at this point, one last question, and that is it has to do with the metal building, the material. I'm not necessarily opposed to metal construction for facilities. But I'm curious to know, where else do we have this kind of building on Florence Boulevard? It's our main thoroughfare, it's our main business corridor, and I'm not aware of metal buildings anywhere.
So Chairman Snyder, I can address that question. A metal building that I can think of is Harbor Freight Tools. And I do also want to point out that there is a little bit of a difference between a metal building and a building that uses metal paneling. I'll give you an example here on my, what I call a vest pocket slide. This is a metal panel building. So this would not be considered technically a metal building. It's a building that utilizes metal panels. However, this building does stand out because they're utilizing some other elements such as windows, and they're shifting the orientation of the paneling. If you notice, the white portion of the building is vertical, and the gray portion of the building is horizontal. So this building did do some steps to make it more pronounced and aesthetically pleasing. Unfortunately,
it certainly doesn't look.
I'm sorry?
Go ahead. No, please go ahead.
If this area was zoned as a planned area development, there would be an inherent embedded amount of design guidelines that we would review. And usually in planned area development zones, there's a lot more architectural control to ensure that as multiple pad sites build, that it's constructed with compatible colors and materials and specific architectural requirements. Unfortunately, in the B2 zone, there is not a lot of design requirements. And so, though I can guide the applicant to some extent, there's not a lot of ability for me to stipulate that it be designed with something other than a metal panel construction.
Okay, and I will take your comments, and I understand them, and certainly that's a pretty nice looking building. Doesn't look like that building exists at Casa Grande, but if you could go back to the site plan slide, I'll hold on to my Dramamine while you do that. One more, I think. Close enough. Yeah, I think you just had it. The building that would be constructed for this Circle K operation backs up on almost onto the property line that is the Warren access off of Florence Boulevard. Is that correct?
So Chairman Snyder, you mentioned Circle K. Do you mean Firestone?
I'm sorry, Firestone. Thank you for the correction.
No problem. The building is spaced a little bit over 15 feet from the property boundary that is shared with the Warren Funeral Home.
Okay, and that is going to be one more or less solid wall. Is that correct?
Yes.
And the proposal is for that to be metal panels, correct?
Yes.
I don't know about anybody else, but I do know that the sun usually comes up in the east and it gets quite bright. And I am wondering about the reflectivity and the danger of having a great deal of sunlight reflected into people who are traveling west. as on Florence Boulevard in the early hours of the morning when the sun's coming up. That seems to me to be a serious consideration.
Are there any other questions of the commission for staff? Okay, if not, I'd like to give the applicant an opportunity to come forward. Please state your name and address for the record.
Brad, 2355 East Camelback Road, Phoenix, Arizona. I'm with the Embry Group, the developer for Firestone.
Would you like to address the commission?
So, Chairman and Commissioners, good evening. What I'd like to do is ask right away for a continuation so that we can spend more time with staff to talk about the traffic. We addressed the traffic with traffic engineer, the city traffic engineer. The traffic that the store generates doesn't even trigger a full traffic study. It's very low. It's not just a tire store, it is a service center as well as a tire store, so it will have lower volumes of traffic. But tonight, I think it would be best if we continued and spent time with staff and the traffic engineer, looked at the traffic, and came up with some additional ideas.
So procedurally, would the commission like to consider the request for a postponement or continue the public hearing and hear other testimony? So what's the wishes of the commission? Do you want to consider the request for postponement at this point, or do you want to continue the public hearing?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr.
Member Snyder here.
Yes.
I guess I'd be amenable to the continuance. I'd particularly invite applicants' consideration of the condition that I had talked about in terms of providing tire service in the parking lot as opposed to in the bays. That would be helpful.
If this item is postponed, staff will work with the applicant on all the issues that we've heard tonight, the traffic issue, the reflectivity of the east elevation, the metal siding, the work activity in the parking lot, all the concerns that we've heard this evening, we will discuss with the applicant and ask for the design to address those in some way. So that would be staff's intent. So could we get a motion to postpone? Let me ask the applicant one question before we make a motion. If the postponement, if he would like a 30-day or a 60-day postponement?
30 days.
Okay. So that would be to your August, I think it's August 1st meeting. It's early August.
It's August 6th.
August 6th, thanks, James. So postpone it to your August 6th meeting.
Can I ask
Member Tucker, motion to postpone.
Okay.
Second, Member Snyder.
Okay. So can we go ahead and have a vote on the motion to postpone?
Can I ask him a question first?
Commissioner Dugan wants to ask the applicant a question. Go ahead, Commissioner Dugan.
Is there any possibility that when we come back in August, we're probably going to postpone it, that you would consider a block building instead of a metal building?
He can, why don't we just let that be an issue that he can think about, okay?
Okay.
Versus forcing him to make that
I just want to know
commitment.
if you would consider it.
Yeah, so we'll put that on the table as something is an issue, okay? All right, roll call, please, on the motion to postpone.
Yes.
Member Snyder?
Aye.
Member Anderson? I don't know. Member Dugan?
Yes.
Member Tucker?
Yes.
Vice Chairman McBride? I think we lost him too.
Okay, that's 4 members for postponement, so that motion passes. This item will be put back on your August agenda. Thank you. Before we go to the next item, we've actually closed that public hearing because we're going to hear it again in August. There was postponed. If I could, we have had some communication from Commissioner Anderson that said that she is still listening, but she can't communicate, she can't speak. Can we make sure that she's not muted in our system?
So I do see now something new that wasn't there before, which is the microphone symbol. So can we ask Tammy to speak to test it?
Commissioner Anderson, if you can hear us, would you test your microphone?
Paul, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, I think Tammy is on her phone. Yeah, Tammy is on her phone, which is where I was earlier. And when you guys couldn't hear me, I had to go onto the internet audio. But she's on an iPad, so I don't think she has a microphone.
Okay.
So for some reason, we cannot hear her phone anymore, even though we heard it earlier. So I don't know how to fix that issue. If you go to the participants, the 623-570, that's her phone number, and it shows her muted. So I don't know if there's something you guys can do to unmute her, but I had to switch to internet audio too, so I don't know what's going on if you call on my phone.
Hit James, go down to that phone number, please, at the bottom.
623?
Hit unmute.
I thought that was.
Hey!
Hey, thank you, we can hear you.
Awesome. Well, just for the record, I affirmed every decision for the record. Thanks, Mark, for communicating with me, and I'm pretty sure my husband put me on mute.
Well, that's okay. We have now unmuted you successfully. So thanks for joining us. Okay.
Mr. Tice, point of order.
Yes, sir.
Since we somewhat short-circuited the usual process for this, and there are members of the public, I believe, that are present. I can't see them, but I'm assuming they are, who might want to, is it appropriate for them to offer up those comments so that they can, the applicant and staff can take them into account?
I'm afraid not, Commissioner Snyder. We've closed the public hearing on that item, and I asked the commission if they wanted to consider public comments before they made a motion on postponement, and the decision was to make the motion to vote on postponement first. So we're going to have to stick with that decision, but any member of the public can communicate with staff regarding this item, and we'll certainly take those comments into consideration as we meet with the applicant.
Hey, Paul, this is Mark.
Yes, Mark.
Hey, I don't think we ever actually opened the public meeting, so I think if the commissioners want to allow, usually if we have a chairman there, the chairman can allow additional public comment if he chooses. It's up to them. I know we don't have a chairman there, so I think if the members want to hear from the public tonight, we can open it up and then just continue it to the next meeting, but that would be up to them.
Okay. Let's take a quick polling of the commissioners. If you want to open the public hearing on item 5 to allow the public to comment on the item that was postponed. So let's have a quick roll call on that. Linda?
Have a roll call.
We'll decide what we want to do here.
Member Estrada?
No.
Member Snyder?
Aye.
Member Anderson?
Yes.
Member Dugan?
Yes.
Member Tucker?
Yes.
And I believe we don't have Vice Chairman McBride.
Okay, good. So we have a consensus to open the public hearing on on item number 5, and so we'll invite any member of the public up to the podium who would like to address the commission on item number 5.
Thank you, Commissioners. For the record, my name is Jackie Guthrie, 3860 North Pinal Avenue, Casa Grande, 85122. So I will just keep it short, but we do have some of the same concerns that commission members have already reiterated, and that is the metal building. And yes, we do have one other metal building on Florence Boulevard, Harbor Freight, which was built in 1976 when we had about 18,000 people in this town. We've done a lot of improvements since that time, and there is not another metal building on Florence Boulevard besides that one. So we are concerned with that, and if you think about a building that's 130 feet long, that's the equivalent of about an 11-story tall building. That's a lot of building that everybody heading west is just going to see this long, white metal building. We are concerned with noise being generated, so appreciate the suggestion that was made that everything be done inside the building. And you've already heard our concerns about traffic. So with that, I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak? Come on forward, sir. Hang on, we're going to sterilize that for you a little bit.
Do you trust that if you were not feeling well?
Go ahead and give us your name and address for the
Yeah,
record,
thank
please.
you for hearing us comments, because I really don't have time to come back. My name is David Zanizer. I live at 491 East Dartmouth here in Casa Grande. The comment about the tire store, Firestone. We do have a lot of tire stores in Casa Grande, but none of them virtually can work on motorhomes. We have over 10 RV parks in this town, and I've owned an RV since I moved here. I had to have tires on it twice, and it's a real hassle to get it done. They do it out behind the building with the big pry bars. None of them have any machines that can break tires down. None of them have any machine they can balance tires on. That's the 19-inch one, which is the Balco, or the 22-inch ones, which are on the bigger motorhomes. You can't get them worked on here. And if you want a brake replaced on them, a brake pad, that's a major problem in this town. With 10 RV parks, you have to go to Chandler or somewhere else to get anything done on your motorhome. Norris does no repairs on motorhomes that isn't on the coach itself. They don't touch any of the drivetrain. They don't touch any of that stuff. So I just want to add that. We have a lot of tire stores, but none of them can work on the motorhomes in this town, which is the item I'm here for. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else in the public like to address the commission on this agenda item? Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing on item number 5, and we'll move into item number 6, which is a public hearing in consideration of a request by Steve Wallace for a zone change for approximately 2.47 acres located along the west side of Potabom, north of Florence Boulevard, known by parcel number 505-16-005G, 805 North Potabom Avenue. The zone change is from B2 to R3 multifamily residential, and the planner is James Gagliardi.
Good evening, Planning Commissioners. This is James, in case you presenting this evening. As Paul Tice had prefaced, this is a zone change request from general business to multifamily residential. The subject site is just shy of 2.5 acres north of Florence Boulevard on the west side of Potabom. Basically, this parcel is directly north of Giddens Tires and Sonic. The applicant is requesting to rezone this property from B2, which is a commercial zoning, to R3 to accommodate an intention to develop the site for a multifamily development. Upon rezoning, development will require Planning Commission approval of a major site plan. That major site plan has not yet been submitted. However, the applicant has provided a concept plan which reveals their specific intention to construct 5 separate 5,000 square foot single-story fourplexes. The conceptual layout is on your screen with basically a center parking area. As single-story fourplexes, they're also proposing fenced backyards to provide private open space for each unit. Now, I want to discuss some differences between the B2, what the property is currently zoned, and R3. The B2 zone district is intended for low-intensity retail or service outlets, so businesses like restaurants, office buildings, general retail. It's generally located in areas served by arterial roads. The maximum height in B2 is 35 feet, and it would have to accommodate setbacks such as 35 feet from the front. On the sides, they get an aggregate total of 15 feet, a rear setback of 15. And generally, parking is 1 parking space per 250 square foot of building, but it depends on the specific use. The proposed zoning district of R3 is a multifamily zone. It's intended for high-density housing and multifamily structures. Now, the question is, what's high density? That is driven by the city's general plan, which stipulates that for a site this size, 20 dwelling units per acre would be the maximum allowed, which would yield 49 units. However, there's other development standards that would also have to be met. There has to be, the lot size has to be large enough to equal 2,000 square foot for every unit. They have to provide between 300 to 400 square foot of outdoor living area per unit. The maximum height of the building is 35 feet, the same as B2. The front setbacks and rear setbacks are a little bit different. They can be as close to the road as 20 feet. The sides are 15. And this type of development requires basically 2.25 parking spaces per dwelling unit. When reviewing zone changes, there's 3 criteria that have to be evaluated, and I go into more detail in the staff report, which has been provided. But I want to talk about the 3 specific criteria. The first is that the action is consistent with the city's general plan. This area is within the community center designation. Both the B2 zone and the proposed R3 zone are listed as appropriate zone districts within this general plan land use category. Within the land use element portion of the general plan, the following goals and policies support this zone change request. One of the goals and policies is that we should support infill development in areas where infrastructure capacity and services are already in place and available. This site would be well served by Potabom, and there's existing utilities that can serve the site. So it's different than a greenfield site where a lot of expense, which ultimately would fall on the hands of the city to maintain in terms of public infrastructure, is not required here because it's already present. The applicant would have to develop a sidewalk along the Potabom frontage and a street light. However, that's really minimal improvements. There's also a strategy in the general plan that encourages infill along Florence Boulevard, specifically between Pinal and I-10. And there is a goal to support a wide variety of housing choices in Casa Grande. Since this isn't a corner parcel, it probably ultimately isn't suitable for commercial development. And so multifamily does offer a nice option, and it does provide for a broad range of use. You'll now have residential introduced along with the existing business and commercial uses to support community activity. The second zone change criteria is that it shall conform to the general plan if it proposes land use, densities, and intensities within the range of identified uses of the general plan. So as I discussed on a previous slide, this area actually allows up to 20 dwelling units per acre. However, the applicant is proposing only 8 dwelling units per acre with their conceptual plan. The community center section of the general plan lists as an appropriate use higher density residential developments. Therefore, this is appropriate. The last criteria is that the proposed zone change is necessary and proper at this time to meet the land use needs of the city. Multifamily development has been recognized as a needed housing choice. It's been stated that the existing multifamily options are running at about 90% occupancy. The last apartment complex to be completed in Casa Grande was in 2014, and that's the completion of Tierra Point Apartments, which has a total of 236 units. So if you take a look at 2014 when Tierra Point finished, and there's a total of 236 units that's been constructed, since that time there's been 5,027 single-family and manufactured homes permitted. So there has been an identified need to allow multifamily. As far as the notification process, it did meet that which is required by city code, and staff did not receive any comments. I'd be happy to, well, before I'm happy to answer any questions, I do want to state that the recommendation is that staff recommends that the Planning Commission forward to City Council a recommendation to approve a zone change from B2 to R3 for the property located at 805 North Potabom. Now I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Do any of the commissioners have questions of staff? Okay, hearing none, we'll see if the applicant could come forward and address the commission.
My name is Wallace. I reside at 19677 West Desert Views Drive in Casa Grande.
Thank you. Would you like to add anything, Mr. Wallace?
Well, I've owned the property for 15 years, and we've had it for sale, and it's just like there's nothing going on in that zoning, so we're going to try and change it and maybe get some housing, multifamily housing going on. I think it's a really good area right in the middle of the city.
Anything else you'd like to add?
No.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Commissioners have any questions of the applicant?
The parking, all the parking, you got a lot of parking spaces. Is that going to be covered parking?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Any other questions from commissioners? Anyone on the phone have any questions? All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
With that, we'll open the public hearing to anyone else who would like to come forward and address the commission on this item. Okay, seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing, and we're at the table for a motion.
Motion to approve DSA 200093 for zone change.
I think you have to put the recommendation to the
Member
city
Snyder.
council.
So we have a motion by Commissioner Tucker. Was that a second by Commissioner Snyder?
Yes.
Okay, any discussion on the motion?
Paul.
Yes, Mark.
Hey, just to be clear, I think Member Tucker said a motion to approve, but this is a recommendation to council. So I assume it's a motion to forward a favorable recommendation?
Yes, thank you, Mark.
Okay.
Second agrees.
Okay, motion and second. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, let's call a roll call.
Member Estrada?
Yes.
Member Snyder?
Aye.
Member Anderson?
Yes.
Member Dugan?
Yes.
Member Tucker?
Yes.
Okay, that motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Wallace. Okay, the next item on the agenda, item number 7, is a public hearing and consideration of a request by the WLB Group on behalf of Bloomfield Capital upon a 57.30 acre property known as parcel number 504-09024P in an area bounded by Quartzon, Silver Reef, and Casa Grande Avenue. And the specific requests are for a zone change for approximately 9.9 acres from R1A to B2 general business. The second request is a zone change for approximately 22.5 acres from R1A to R4 mobile home residential. And the last request is a zone change from approximately 24.9 acres from R1A to PAD RV recreational vehicle park. And James Gagliardi is the planner.
All right, thank you, Mr. Tice. So a little bit of background before I talk about the specifics of the request is that this 57.3 acre parcel that's currently zoned R1A was established as that zone district through a zone change approval in 2016. Prior to 2016, the west half of the site was zoned R2, which is a multifamily residential zoning, and the east half of the site was zoned R1, which was a single-family residential zone. The present zoning, R1A, is known as single-family residential attached. It allows single-family stick-built homes on lots the size of 5,000 square feet or larger. Upon platting this parcel into lots and roadways, homes could be constructed either as standalone, or the homes could share one common wall with another dwelling on a separate lot. So I provided an example on the screen to show you sort of what that would look like. The end lots there are single-family homes. It's not attached to any other dwelling. Whereas, as you see in the homes in the middle, they're on their own lots, but they share the lot line with the common wall. Now, upon the zoning of an area for single-family or two-family residential zone districts, the next step for the applicant would be to plat or subdivide the property into lots and streets or rights-of-way. Though there have been preliminary plats previously prepared for this parcel, no final plat has ever been recorded. The dilemma with that is the fact that now no subdivision is allowed to be created with 6 or more lots, since a certificate of assured water supply is now required by Arizona Department of Water Resources for 6 or more lots. The developer had not secured a certificate of assured water supply previously. Any of the previous owners had not. And Arizona Department of Water Resources has since stopped issuing certificates of assured water supply for this portion of Pinal County. So the zoning of R1A renders the site relatively undevelopable because they can't plat it into single-family lots because 6 or more triggers the requirement for a certificate of assured water supply, which ADWR is not issuing at the moment. So since developing this site for single-family homes is no longer an option, the applicant is requesting that this parcel instead be rezoned in 3 separate districts. There is an area up towards Quartzon, basically east of the car dealerships, that's being proposed for general business, which is known as B2. It's a commercial zone. There's another portion of the site, about 22.5 acres, proposed for R4, which is known as mobile home residential in the city code, that basically accommodates manufactured houses. And then just shy of 25 acres to the south of both districts is the proposed zoning of PADRV, which stands for Planned Area Development for specifically recreational vehicles. Now, recreational vehicles is the main title, but basically that includes park models by code. So a little bit more specifics in terms of what those 3 districts accommodate. Firstly, the B2 zone allows low-intensity retail or service outlets. It's intended for the provision of goods and services on a community market scale to be located in areas served by an arterial street, which would be, in this case, Courtson. The R4 zone is intended for manufactured home communities at medium densities. Also in the R4, you are allowed to build stick-built, but you're also allowed to build manufactured homes. The minimum lot or space size per dwelling is 4,500 square feet. The PAD-RV zone is designed as for recreational vehicles, so either RVs or park models, and the minimum space size here would be 1,500 square feet per code. These areas in the R4 and the PAD proposed parcels would not be subdivided as lots. They would be basically leased spaces. Therefore, no certificate of assured water supply would be needed. It's likely that this parcel would be split into 3 separate parcels, 1 for each zone district, but that would not trigger the certificate of assured water supply. The applicant did provide a conceptual layout, and I do want to mention that following the consideration of these rezones, if ultimately approved by City Council, the next step for the applicant would be to submit major site plans, which is a requirement for the 3 zone districts proposed. But looking at this conceptual layout, I want to propose to you basically what would be provided with these, with this concept. So firstly, there's a proposal for a minimum of a 6-foot-high masonry wall to be constructed along the perimeter and gates at the entrance. This is proposed as a gated community. However, there are some additional steps that would have to happen to allow that to be possible through a request to City Council. Areas of 15 to 20 feet of landscaping would be developed between the property line abutting roadways and the masonry wall. The PAD-RV zone actually requires a depth of 20 feet. The staff report didn't reflect that, but that's an updated technical modification that they'd have to address. Prior to any type of development, as I mentioned, a major site plan would be required. And it's at the time of major site plan review that we would really get into the analysis in terms of whether the development is suitable in terms of the traffic impact and what type of drainage improvements have to be made to support the proposed development. Conceptually, at the time of rezoning, however, they have generally talked about how they would go about addressing those concerns, and I'll walk you through that on the upcoming slide. So essentially, this development would prompt some public improvement that's adjacent to the site. There would be a new additional eastbound through lane on Courtson, along with the construction of curb, gutter, sidewalk, and street lights for that portion of the property that's abutting that public right-of-way. Casa Grande Avenue would get sidewalks and street lights for that portion of the parcel abutting Casa Grande. And Silver Reef would actually be doubled in width. There'd be a new westbound lane provided. Currently, the roadway that's there, it's a 2-lane road, but that would become just the eastbound travel lane, and the new asphalt would accommodate the westbound travel lane. There would also be improvements on Silver Reef, such as sidewalk, curb, gutter, street lights installed on the north side of the road. The other improvements that would have to happen at the time of major site plan is there'd be improvements to the drainage intake at both Silver Reef, where the water sheet flows across College Park into the site. That would have to, there would be formal improvements made to channelize that. And there would also be improved drainage intake at Racine and CG Avenue, which would help relieve some of the current existing conditions that are observed adjacent to that property during storm events. The property would also have to accommodate for on-site retention basins. So as they develop, because right now it's raw desert, as they create roadways and structures, that water can no longer permeate into the ground. So they would have to accommodate retention basins that could handle that runoff. So there wouldn't be adverse impact to surrounding development. The R4 zone would conceptually plan for 108 leased spaces for manufactured homes. The minimum lot size, or space size, I should say, is 4,500 square feet. And when I talk about manufactured homes, these are some examples of what is a manufactured home. Sometimes there's a little bit of clarification needed because there's several terms for these types of houses. So this gives you an idea of what you would see in a manufactured home community. The PAD-RV area would accommodate 225 spaces. For RVs, 120 of those would be designed for pull-through spaces, sort of what you see on the screen here, where there's drive aisles on both sides of the space. However, what this picture doesn't show is they would actually be a little bit bigger because they're proposing a space of 1,750 square feet per pull-through space. And then they're also proposing 105 standard spaces, which would be about 1,950 square feet. And that would be more for RVs that wouldn't come and go as often, and it could also accommodate park models. The concept of what park models are shown here. They're still technically RVs, but they are more permanently affixed to the ground. One of the aspects of this zone district is each RV space would be required to provide 1 tree and 3 shrubs on each lot. Also, the southerly row of spaces, that which is most parallel to Silver Reef, would be park models only. They would not be the type of RV that you see on this screen. And I've mentioned this before earlier, but they do have to revise their concept plan here to show that there would actually be a 20-foot distance from the public street to the perimeter wall adjacent to the PAD-RV area. And the applicant is aware of that modification. The other recommended technical modification is that the rules and regulations with regard to the PAD-RV area need to speak about accessory structures. The code does limit accessory structures to a certain size, but there's some clarity needed in terms of if any are allowed and if there's specific design requirements for them. Also proposed with this project is a clubhouse amenity. However, that would be subject to a major site plan review. But I'm pointing that out because in the center of this area is a large open area for the community center use. In considering applications for zone changes, the Planning and Zoning Commission shall consider the following. The first criteria is that the action is consistent with the city's general plan. This area is within the neighborhood's land use designation of the Casa Grande 2020 general plan. One of the goals found within the general plan is that we're to support infill development in areas where there's existing infrastructure. This is an infill development because there is developing and developed neighborhoods on most sides of the parcel. Quartzon is programmed to be a major arterial road, and that basically is a roadway classification that states that ultimately it's supposed to be 140 feet wide with 6 travel lanes. So it's well served from a traffic standpoint on the north. Casa Grande is designated as a major collector. Major collectors are designed to ultimately be 80 feet wide. Typically you'd see 2 lanes, but with a median that would either be for turning or it could ultimately be a landscaped median, depending on ultimate roadway improvements made by the city. Silver Reef on the south is designed actually as a minor collector, which would ultimately be 60 feet wide. It's currently only 30. So as part of this process, they would have to do maps of dedication to dedicate the appropriate rights of way. Another goal of the general plan is that we're to support a wide variety of housing choices. In looking at what housing choices are available, you have your stick-built home, you have multifamily development, like with the proposal we just saw before this one, you have manufactured homes, and you have RV and park models. And this would help accommodate that housing choice for manufactured homes and RVs and park models. Another criteria that's looked at is a rezoning conforms to the general plan if it proposes land uses, et cetera, with appropriate densities and intensities of the general plan. In looking at the individual proposed zone districts, the R4 area would yield a density of 4.82 dwelling units per acre. The PAD-RV area, where there are smaller spaces, would yield a density of just over 9 dwelling units per acre. This density is allowed in the general plan. Up to 18 dwelling units per acre are allowed on these respective zone districts. There is not a density consideration for the B2 zone that's proposed as part of this, since no dwellings are permitted, and nor, you wouldn't be allowed to do dwellings in B2. However, the neighborhood's land use designation does support many uses that are allowed within the B2 zone. The final criteria that gets examined with zone changes is that it's necessary and proper at this time to meet the land use needs of the residents of the city. So in looking at just simply the growth rate this past year, it's approximately 2.39%. As I was mentioning previously, there's basically 4 different housing types that can accommodate that growth. Since development can't presently occur on this R1A zoned property, because as I mentioned, Arizona Department of Water Resources is not issuing certificates of assured water supply when you're creating 6 or more lots, this parcel could be better suited for other housing types that do not require platting. Regarding the public hearing notification efforts, it followed that which is required in the city code. Staff did receive a number of comments, basically 7 inquiries in the forms of visits to the office, phone calls, emails, and the screen shows where the known addresses are of the people who have provided comments. They're sort of flashing on the screen. So 2 residents on Silver Reef provided input, and their concerns were that single-family development on that parcel would be more compatible than manufactured homes and RVs. They would like to see a continuation of that single-family concept on the north side of Silver Reef. Both property owners had also expressed property value concerns, and they also both, I shouldn't say both, I know one for certain had expressed concern about the drainage, water runoff. There were 4 emails provided from residents on Veckel Road. Their concerns were the water runoff. Casa Grande Avenue does tend to get a lot of water draining down the center of the street in stormwater events. And they would also prefer a continuation of single-family homes similar to that which is existing within the neighborhood. They cited it was an established neighborhood, and there should be more of that similar type of use continued. They're concerned about the traffic generation that these zone districts would promote. And specifically, they mentioned there are a lot of children walking to school in this area and families going to churches. And so this would create increased traffic, which would cause a concern. Property value concerns. And there was also someone who was not in favor of the B2 zoning because of the traffic issues. That would just, the quote was it would add additional traffic to Courtson. The Cadota resident had basically expressed the same concerns, traffic congestion and property value. Just to sort of shed some light or to speak on some of those issues, I do want to specifically go back to this slide to talk about some improvements that would help address concerns with regard to traffic and drainage. So there would be roadway improvements to Quartzen, Casa Grande, at least that portion that's abutting the site, and Silver Reef. But more importantly, at the time of major site plan, they'd have to submit a traffic impact analysis, and it would look at the amount of traffic generated by those uses and that type of traffic that would be put onto the existing roadways. It would take a look at the level of service of those existing roadways and what improvements would be needed, even if they are technically off-site, in order for those roadways to not fall below what's deemed as an acceptable level of service. So there would be, there's the possibility of some additional improvements other than what you're seeing immediately adjacent to the site based on the findings of the traffic impact analysis. They are proposing areas of 15 feet to 20 feet of landscaping between the screen wall and the public streets. So that would help mitigate use-to-use compatibility. And then also back to really what's gathered from the major site plan is analysis of other concerns like drainage. As I mentioned before, there would be improvements to the drainage intake at Silver Reef as well as at Racine. Also looking at compatibility, because that was a very good point. When you see on the left, it's the proposed concept plan. You have the single-family neighborhood on the south of Silver Reef, as well as on the other side of Casa Grande Avenue. And, you know, on the north side of Silver Reef, what's proposed is something different than single-family. And so I brainstormed to think what existing development is similar to what's being proposed. And I thought of Fiesta Grande Park with the residential subdivision that's to the east of that, specifically at Valerie Street. And so in this picture, you know, it's good and bad because, you know, when I look at this picture, I see some errors. There's no landscaping on that side of Valerie Street next to the RV park. And there's no sidewalk, there's no street lights. And that was an older park that was approved during previous development standards. And this does serve as a good example of why we've updated our standards to require 20 feet of depth from the property line to the screen wall. And there are specific landscape requirements. So unlike this site, you would see on Silver Reef, you know, not only the construction of sidewalk and street lights, but you'd see more depth of landscaping, and you'd see much better landscape treatment. Why I really wanted to show you this picture, though, other than the fact that it's void of landscaping and it is stark, is that when you look at the single-family development on the north side of Valerie and the park model development and the RV development on the south side, you don't really see the park model and RVs on the south side of Valerie because of that depth and the mature trees. It's on the wrong side of the screen wall, personally, but you know, you really don't see the difference in the uses because of that screening and that depth. So presently, Silver Reef looks like this. With houses fronting Silver Reef on the south side of the road. Basically, there would be additional roadway. It would be widened. There would be curb, gutter, and sidewalk. And pardon my semi-amateur graphic skills using PowerPoint. There would be a 20-foot depth of landscaping. I didn't put the trees in because I'm not that good at PowerPoint to show trees and shrubs. But there would be landscaping placed within that 20-foot depth. And there would be a provision of a minimum of a 6-foot wall. One of the recommended technical modifications is that 6 feet be a minimum, so that to further promote compatibility, that wall height could be heightened. So in considering these zone change requests, staff is making the following recommendations. Firstly, for DSA 20-00084 R1A to B2, staff is recommending that Planning Commission forward to Council a recommendation to approve, subject to these 5 conditions as stated in the staff report and in this presentation. Staff recommends that you forward a recommendation to approve the zone change from R1A to R4, subject to the list of conditions as stated in this presentation and staff report. And we also recommend approval of, or that you forward a recommendation to council to approve the PADRV zone, subject to conditions and a list of technical modifications. There was a new one that didn't make it into your staff report, but I've already addressed it regarding providing a 20-foot perimeter wall, or a depth of 20 feet from the perimeter wall to the property line abutting a public street. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, James. Does the commission have any questions of staff?
Yeah, I got a bunch. On the park models, the park models that you had on there, beautiful models. But anyway, then you said, no, I'm talking about the manufactured homes. Let's go back to the manufactured. There we go. Okay, those are great. So that's, you're going to require ground level, correct?
They would have to be, yes.
Yeah, okay. And so then you said stick model. What is a stick model? That's a home, a stick model? What are you talking there? Regular homes?
Chairman Dugan, the zone district of R4 does allow the ability for a builder to build basically a stick-built house. So with a classic foundation, studs, they're not intending to do stick-built homes here, but the R4 does allow that.
Because of the water deal, they only can be able to rent or lease them out, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so they can't be moved?
Right.
Only these could be moved at some point?
Yes, there is more mobility with them, but.
Now, the park models are above ground, and I've seen park models after a long period of time, because they're above ground, are looking pretty bad. Can you make the park models ground level, especially when you're dealing with 55 and older?
Chairman Dugan, I can't fully speak to that. I know that there is a specific foundation type that typically is involved with park models, where, to your point, it's not on the ground, it's more of a wall system. But I'd be happy to have the applicant speak to that, or perhaps the planning director could opine.
Okay.
So the answer is yes, you can ground set a park model.
You can?
Yes, you have to excavate a little lower and for the whole frame and foundation to sit lower than this one. You can see the picture on both of these require steps to get up to it, but they can be lowered, yes.
Okay. And what we're approving tonight isn't all the details of this, correct?
That's right. That'll come back to you as a major site plan if in fact the zoning is approved.
And the last question I got, Courtson Road, you're widening that's a 5-lane road, so you're in front of this park deal, so you're gonna make that basically a 5-lane road in front of this park, right? So you're gonna have a turn lane and 2 other lanes on each side, correct?
So you're right that Courtson is a principal arterial with 140 foot of right-of-way.
Yep.
So we'll make sure we get the 140 feet. Ultimately, the cross-section for Courtson does have 6 lanes, 3 in each direction. However, the city's policy is that we only require developers to build 2 lanes, 2 in each direction, and any turn lanes that their project may need. We don't make them build the full 6 facility.
I understand.
But the traffic impact analysis that will be submitted at the next level of the review process will tell us what kind of turn lane we might need.
Okay, and then the RV storage is just basically roofs with RV, double C trailers and with roofs over them, correct?
So
With
Chairman-
pavement?
Chairman Dugan, right now, what a proposed potential use could be, would be RV storage, which could potentially look like what you're describing.
Okay.
Usually it is covered, but it's open on all sides except for the
Yep.
top. However, that's not the exact use, because as a B2, unless Planning Commission wants to recommend specifying certain uses in that zone, it would be open to any use that's permitted in the B2. Another potential use might be like a RV repair business or cafe, some use that might be compatible to the concept that they're proposing.
And one last question, we approved this last year a manufactured home facility just about, what, a half a mile south of there, is that correct?
That's correct.
And that's about 300 homes
It
in
was
there,
called
correct?
Santa Fe.
Spanish Trails West.
Oh, Spanish Trails, thanks, James. Yes, and
And
it
that's-
probably is the same applicant.
It's the same applicant?
I do believe, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions of staff? Any other commissioners? Anyone on the phone have any questions for staff?
Mr. Tice,
Yes, Mr.
Commissioner Snyder. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Tice. I'm like Commissioner Dugan. I have a number of things. First of all, those of you who don't follow infrastructure a lot, Courtson Road is also, in addition to being a major arterial, is also the route for the city's wastewater treatment plant and sewers traversing from east to west. And every time there's a major upgrade, almost every time there's a major upgrade to the wastewater treatment plant, Courtson gets dug up. So I'm just saying that is an incredibly busy place, not only for traffic, but for other reasons. I am concerned about the proposed layout, and I understand we're not dealing specifically with a site plan, but we have R4, which would be the manufactured housing units, and they're backing up to churches. And then we have RV, the PADRV, thank you, James, layout, which is backing up to stick-built residential, single-family homes. Just logically, it would make sense to me to flip those, because our PADRV, you've got RVs moving in and out. Not all the time, it's not every day, but you've got far more traffic with the RVs than you do with the R4 park models and manufactured housing units. I'm also concerned, and I raised this with the Fiesta Trails West that you just talked about. There's no egress or entrance to the entire site from the south or from the west. And that concerns me from public safety, emergency services, so on and so forth. It seems very short-sighted to me, again, that we're gonna put that sort of barrier in approving a zoning plan, zoning that will allow that sort of activity. And somewhat in recognition of Commissioner Dugan's point, this is an awful, awful lot of manufactured housing and RV housing within a square mile. I mean, I don't want to offend anybody else in Pinal County by referring to another community that was noted for its shiny metal roofs, because that was most of its housing component. But I'm concerned that we seem to be loading up this particular area with that kind of product. I'm also concerned about the drainage. That makes a ton of sense. I've seen it, and it's not a good thing. I just think that I have issues with approval of these zone changes. I really do. I understand that's not a question for Mr. Gagliardi, unless somebody wants to pat me on the head and say, "Don't worry about it. We'll take care of it."
Commissioner Snyder, I think those are excellent comments, and probably best to allow the applicant to address those when they come to the podium. Would anyone else have any questions of staff before we hear from the applicant? Okay, then let's have the applicant come forward and address the commission.
Okay, good evening. Rob Longacre. I'm with the WLB Group representing the property owners tonight and Mr. Peter Holden, who is the developer of the project. Who also, I should mention, it was discussed tonight, Spanish Trails West, the project to the south of this site, is also Mr. Peter Holden's project as well. As you may be aware, we recently had that approved. Zoning was approved, major site plan. All the improvement plans were recently approved. Happy to report that he's going to be starting construction on that site next week. So we look forward to bringing that project online. Wanted to thank Mr. Gagliardi for a very thorough staff report. I think he covered all of the aspects of the project, so I appreciate the thoroughness of his report. I would like to address some of the comments that I heard from the commissioners tonight. And just to touch on a few of them, the park models, yes, they can be ground set, so it is a more attractive look to do that. Basically, an area below on the site is shelled out, dirt is removed. There's oftentimes a stem wall, a low stem wall that's built, and the unit is set on the stem wall,
Yeah.
so you can't really even see that it's not actually sitting on a concrete slab. So yes, that can be done. There's been some discussion about Courtson tonight, and we do understand that it is a major street, a heavily traveled street. It also has significant infrastructure in that I believe there's 2 sewer lines in Courtson, because I know that they extend to the west to the treatment plant. 2 large sewer lines, in fact, trunk sewer lines. We would connect to those sewer lines to convey wastewater from this site. I'm not knowledgeable if the city has any plans to improve those sewer lines or increase the size of those sewer lines, but my basic understanding is that they seem to be of a size that they can carry a significant amount of wastewater. There was some discussion about the RV storage area. And yes, at this point, that is the primary use that's anticipated, that it would store RVs and they would be covered with roofs. But as Mr. Gagliardi already mentioned, the site would be available for other uses. So there could be other commercial uses that would be directly connected to the project. Or, of course, since the site is located on Courtson, there could be other commercial uses in there that would serve a greater area. We've had some discussion tonight about the location of the R4 areas and the RV areas. And basically, when we were designing the site, we were looking at that very issue to determine which area would be best for R4, which would be best for the RV. And we decided basically to put the RV area in its current location primarily because, and we appreciate the comment about compatibility with surrounding uses, but we felt there were enough measures, enough mechanisms in the city's code with regard to setbacks, landscape buffers, wall requirements, and the landscaping itself, of course. We felt that those mechanisms provided a good transition to adjacent stick-built residential. We also respect the condition that staff is recommending, which that entire row of units that is adjacent to Silver Reef be park models. We feel that addition will provide a good transition between the existing residents to the south and to the site. With regard to traffic circulation, basically, I'm not sure that it really matters whether the RV area is in its current location or where the R4 area would be. Essentially, any traffic coming in out of the site would be accessing the same locations, leaving the site on Courtson and Casa Grande Avenue. Typically, on sites such as this, 2 points of access are typically sufficient for effectuating efficient access into and out of the site for not only residents of the community, but also for emergency vehicles. We actually purposely did not connect to Silver Reef to the south, mostly because of the fact that we did not want to add any traffic to that road. We understand that it's an existing residential community. Traffic volumes are very low. So out of respect for that, we chose not to make a vehicular connection there. I suppose that you can see where Olive Avenue is located on the map on the screen. If there were additional concerns as we moved along with the project from emergency vehicle outfits, I think it would be possible to provide, say, an emergency access only from Olive and create a gap in the lots on the southern portion of the property there. So if emergency vehicles, police, fire expressed a concern and wished for a third point of access, then I think that's something that we could entertain during the next process in the preparation of the major site plan. The last item I wanted to touch on is surface drainage. So we are aware of how the drainage behaves in this area. And in fact, we feel as though we've come up with a good solution for drainage. In fact, there's drainage moving into the site from the south through College Park. So on the screen you see right now, the blue areas are drainage channels. There's actually existing 45 and 50-foot drainage easements on the site in these locations. So we will retain those on the site. We'll actually collect surface water that's moving into the site from the south, out of College Park into the site, and then let it traverse and move north through the site, and ultimately outlet at Courtson Road through a series of culverts that exist beneath the road. The intersection of Racine and Casa Grande, there's definitely water located in that area during storm events. And as we mentioned before, Casa Grande Avenue is actually a V-section, carries water down the middle of the road. It's inverted. There's quite a bit of water, I understand, moving through Casa Grande Avenue. So this project actually will not add any water to Casa Grande Avenue, but we will make improvements in the area where drainage is entering the site there at the intersection of Casa Grande Avenue and Racine Place to facilitate water moving effectively into the site, into that blue channel that you see on the screen. It'll move in a westerly fashion and then curve to a northerly fashion. And then that drainage water that same water will go beneath Courtson Road through a series of culverts. And from there, it actually travels to the north and ultimately outlets in the north branch of the Santa Cruz. And then just to touch on on-site drainage, and as James pointed out during his presentation, we do have on-site basins that will handle the additional runoff that will be created by the addition of the impervious surfaces on the site. So those are my comments based on the comments I heard from tonight. I'd be happy to entertain any additional comments or questions that anyone might have on the project.
Does the commission have any questions of the applicant?
You stated, the other one that we approved for you guys about 6 months ago, you started construction on that?
It'll start next week, yes.
Last week you did?
Next week.
Next week. And what's your time frame on this one?
Timeframe for construction of the site is probably about 6 months. And after that, they'll begin to lease the lots. So I would say that you would probably see some manufacturing housing out there probably in about a year.
Okay.
Do any other commissioners have questions of the applicant? Okay, hearing none, we'll thank the applicant and open up the public hearing for anyone else in the audience that might like to speak regarding this matter. Come on forward, give us your name and address, and address the commission with your comments. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Kenneth Hunter, 486 East Providence Drive in the College Park area. I'd like to go back to your explanation on the number of RV pads that are going to be put in that RV park.
Sure. You go to the screen. Let's see. Bear with me. So. Here we go.
125 spaces.
So you're looking at roughly 225?
There'll be 225 for the RVs
That's
that
what
are
I was
pull
looking at.
through, and then 105 RV standard spaces, so 330 total.
No, I think, James, it's a total of 225.
Oh, you're right, sorry. You're correct. Yeah, 120 and 105.
Okay, then you had something in there on the number of pads per and equals so much in the water, the hookups for everybody that's going in that area. The water restrictions and whatnot are going in there. So you're gonna put 120 or 225 hookups for just the RV park. I'm not talking about the R4 or the other area, but just in that, you're gonna put in 225 hookups for water.
That's what the applicant is proposing, yes.
You had something written in there that 6.9, I believe it was areas per acre for RVs. I can't see how that many RVs can fit in that small 22-acre area.
There's a couple of things.
Okay, per dwelling unit. That's
right.
Exactly what I'm talking
Right.
about.
Yeah,
9.4 dwelling units
per acre. Correct.
In that area.
Yes, because it's almost 25 acres in size.
Okay, so that's 25 times 9. Comes up close. You get somebody in there that's gonna be there all summer, or all winter, let's put it, because I like the winter time. That's gonna really put a stress on our water products in the College Park area. I'm gonna be down to no pressure at all. Right now, in my particular house, if I put the front and the back on for watering at the same time, I get half flow. So I'm down to about 40 or to 35 pounds. It's gonna put a tremendous stress on the people who live over there. Now let's go to the water. Nice rain, not bad at all. You pull out onto Casa Grande Boulevard. I'm as deep as my tire is. And the minute I get onto that road until I get off at Cottonwood. And then we have the next one up off of Cottonwood, and I can't think of that crossroad offhand. But it's got a tremendous dip, and it's always full. It'll splash water from one side of the road to the other. And that, again, it's given people lots of feathers and a lot of problems. But I'm wondering, they're gonna run that water down now. If the water runs down from the very end of Cottonwood all the way through and drops off down that Racine, across the street and going to the west. There's a flow down there right now that runs about 10 to 12 foot across at about 3 to 4 foot deep. I can't see them putting enough culverts in to cover that. It's gonna be an awful lot of work to come up with that much drainage for that area. And then we can go to what is it gonna do to my house? Sitting right next to an RV park. My house product's gonna go down probably 15 to 20%. And I don't like that. I bought in that area because it was one, it didn't have a homeowners association, which has worked out great. But then again, now we're gonna have a house that's gonna be harder to sell. And I'm not sure we wanna put that type of impact in that area, considering that you've already passed a RV park area on the area 4, the residential 4 area. That you're gonna put another one in right there. There's one down at the other end of the street, just past Cottage Park. Going in there between that and this, I think it's called Safari RV. It's already in there. We've got an awful lot of RV parks in this town, awful lot. A lot more than 5 or 6 or 10 or 20. As I recall, it's something like 35 RV parks total. That's an awful lot more putting in there, and it's gonna hurt my house and my area, and I don't like it there. I really don't. I bought there for the reason that there wasn't anything in the area. Now I've got something that's gonna go in. Or at least it looks like it so far. So I would like to come up with the idea that it's not a good place for us that live in that area. And there's 3 separate divisions in that college park. First, the middle, what I'm in, and the far end, which is the last ones that started in 2005. So those have been in there since 2005. Thank you for listening to me. Appreciate it.
1 second, sir. Let's see if the commission has any questions of the speaker. Any questions of the speaker? Okay, thank you for your comments. Anyone else like to speak? Yes, sir, come on up. We'll disinfect real quick for you.
Thanks, sir. And maybe speak for Ken. Dave Zanizer, 491 Casa Grande College Park. I'm going to speak for Ken and myself. We both own motorhomes, quite honestly. I've owned a motorhome or an RV for 50 years. So I love motorhomes. I just don't really think they should be in this particular area. That's the main reason. Let's go over the things that we're looking at. The people on Silver Reef, what are they going to do? They assumed that they were going to have homes built across the street from them. Now they're going to have trailers. Good or bad, you know, some trailers are new, some trailers are old. Who's going to monitor the quality of the trailers that go in there? I've been in RV parks where they wouldn't even let me in unless my motorhome was 1 year old, you know. Our other RV parks, your motorhome could be built in the 50s. We don't know what's going to end up in there. So, you know, we're playing Russian roulette with our property value. Traffic. Casa Grande Avenue, trying to take a left on Courtson these days, trying to go west on Courtson off of Casa Grande Avenue with the school bus yard. Nobody even mentioned the traffic impact. You guys allowed the school district to build the bus depot right there on Courtson. You don't believe how much traffic that put on Casa Grande Avenue. All those buses come down Courtson, take a ride on Casa Grande Avenue, which is very hard to do right now in a bus. I can't hardly do it in a 32-foot motorhome. So, you know, you got all kinds of traffic issues to deal with here. This ain't gonna be a slam dunk. These people are not gonna be able to get from Courtson to this park right now the way Casa Grande Avenue is configured. That corner lot there, I don't know who owns that lot, 504024. He's gonna lose half his lot when this is done, because there's going to be a big intersection there for people to make turns with the school buses and the RVs. It just ain't going to be real easy. That's a serious problem. Water. Oh yeah, there's water on Casa Grande Avenue. It's curb to curb. It's not a little water in this cement culvert that's 4 feet in the middle of the road. It's literally curb to curb. In this area, you go out there when it's rainy, I don't even go up Casa Grande Avenue. I go across and go through Barris and come out over on Treco, because you can't drive on Casa Grande Avenue when it's raining hard. So, not a little water. A little culvert ain't gonna get it done, buddy. I'm telling you, it's a real floodplain in there. Then all that water goes into that dirt where it gets sucked up. It's gonna be all concrete now. How's that gonna play out? You're gonna have all kinds of flooding issues. And you already mentioned, a gentleman on the phone mentioned, you already approved a modular home park to the south of us. Do we need one to the north of us? You're basically making College Park an isolated residential area between two modular home parks. What the hell do you think that's gonna do to people who live there, home value? You know, we just might as well go out and move out, because they're gonna go right in the toilet. Nobody's gonna wanna live between two modular home parks. So you guys need to think about this. You know, one question for this gentleman. I was here, when was it, 2016, when we gave him the size reduction on the lots. We gave him a break. Smaller lots, you can build homes. Could they have gotten water rights in 2016, build them homes? Was that available to them?
In 2016, yes, but it was right at the cusp of
Yeah. They told us
ADWR
at this
revising.
meeting, I was here, I don't know how many of you gentlemen were here, they were gonna build homes in 2 months. 2 months they were gonna build homes. 4 years later, what have they done? Zip. So I got a lot of sympathy for whoever owns this land, but he's a moron and should have done something 4 years ago when he got the approval to go ahead. I don't know what he's gonna do with this land, but I will be back for the city council meeting with a lot of neighbors when this comes back. So you better think about it. And a lot of people wanted to be here tonight, but they had family issues and couldn't be here. This is not a good project. This ain't gonna work. Somebody's gotta come up with something better than this. That field's a mess. We all like to see something built on it. Traffic drives through there every day, just dust blowing in the air. People coming out from over there on the frontage road, come driving through Silver Reef. They hardly even stop to get off the desert on Silver Reef. They're doing 40 miles an hour out there. We'd love to see something built there. This isn't it, okay? I don't know how this guy gets water rights for this land, but this project would probably use twice as much as regular homes would take to operate. Both Ken and I own RVs. They don't use less water than a house. You're showering, you're washing dishes, it's all the same water. The park's gonna be watering the landscape. It isn't a water saving. They're just circumventing the policy to be able to do something with this property. And somebody needs to work on it. And we will be back. When's this coming back? August 3rd?
That's when it's scheduled for council.
Okay. We will be returning because this isn't gonna fly with College Park. People in there are very upset about this.
Thank you, sir. Are there any questions for the speaker from the commission? No questions? All right, thank you, sir. Oh, Tammy, do you have one?
No, I had no question.
Okay, thought I heard you speak up. Okay, we have one more speaker coming forward here to address the commission.
Sir. John McGuire, 1748. I will try to be very brief. Obviously, this has been the longest P&Z meeting I can remember in quite some time. So I appreciate everybody's patience. I'm not the popular guy here tonight, which is not an unusual position for me to stand up here and be in. I first want to appreciate the people who did send in emails, the gentleman here tonight. You guys have been very respectful in your comments, and I appreciate that. That's a much better way to handle these kinds of issues than some of the people we get up here that get a little bit heated. So I really appreciate your respectful nature in voicing your views. this is another one of these ones where it's no easy answer for me. I don't know for sure, as the last gentleman pointed out, about when water certificates would or would not have been available in the 2016 timeframe. I'm not 100% convinced that it would have been available immediately afterwards. Maybe they should have gotten that or taken care of before they ever came for the rezone that time, which I do remember. I was here for that and thought that would be a decent project. But in the end, here's where we are, right? And the developer here seems to be proposing some decent improvements. I've had a couple people in my Facebook group ask me, wow, will this get Silver Reef fixed? And now I can tell them the answer to that is yes, if it happens. Will that overlie some of the other neighbors' concerns? I don't know. We'll have to find out at council. But in the end, this is a difficult piece of land here to do anything with. And as even this gentleman admitted, he feels for the landowner. And I think that if they're mitigating some of these concerns, first of all, the water concerns on Casa Grande, that's going to be there whether these guys build or not. This development will be required to mitigate their additional water use or drainage issues that they create. So even if they didn't improve Casa Grande Avenue at all, which I doubt is going to be the case, they seem to be having a little bit of improvement, that works. These projects that they've built, they're the same people who did Rancho Val Vista on Treckle. Very nice project. I don't see any of the neighbors that live across the street from Palm Creek complaining. So I don't necessarily believe that because it's an RV park and because there's another one on the south end, that this is going to negatively impact their values. Do there need to be neighbor concerns addressed as in the southern project was during that process? Absolutely, but later into the process. So I think for now this should be approved, and some of these issues that are being brought up could be mitigated during the site plan process. Thank you.
Any questions of the speaker? Thanks. Okay, anyone else like to address the commission on this matter? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and bring it to the table for the commission's consideration.
Hi, this is Member Tucker. I apologize. My battery ran dead after a 3-hour-plus meeting. But if we don't approve this and the zoning stays multifamily, the average homes per unit or residents per unit on multifamily versus this?
All right. So the property is currently zoned R1A, which is not really multifamily. It's single family and duplex, I believe. Is that true, James?
Well, single family and single family attached.
Okay, single family attached, and with a minimum lot size, I think, of 5,000 square feet. So, so it was approved for a subdivision, and we'll tell you how many. James, you know how many units were in the Verde Creek proposal?
They never officially submitted their pre-plat for Verde Creek. I know that the previous, like the zoning, the pre-plat that we had on file when it was zoned R2 on the west and R1 on the east, there's a pre-plat, so I could get the number, but I don't know right off the top of my head.
Okay, so we can't tell you exactly how many units the R1A could produce, but it's minimum 5,000 square foot lots.
Thank you.
Does the manufactured homes and park models, do they have to pay impact fees on each one?
And RV lots as well.
The RV lots, okay. So that helps pay for the infrastructure.
So maybe at this point it would be appropriate to try to get a motion on the floor and a second, and then we can have further discussion on the motion. How's that sound?
Mr. Chairman, I move to project DSA-20-000084 to approve the zone change from R1-A to B2 upon 9.9 acres of land subject to the following conditions by the staff.
And that's to forward it, is that correct? Forwarding it to city.
That goes to the, that has to be required to go to the city, right?
Pardon?
It has to be forwarded to the city council?
Yes, it's a
Yeah, it would be
recommendation.
Forwarded to the city council.
Right.
I
Forward
second that.
a recommendation of approval to city council on the R1A to B2. That's the motion. Is there any,
I would second, Member Snyder.
actually, Commissioner Estrada already seconded you. So we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on that item? Okay, let's have a roll call vote then.
Member Estrada?
Yes.
Member Snyder?
Aye.
Member Anderson?
Yes.
Member Dugan?
Yes.
Member Tucker?
No.
Okay, so that motion passes. So the next item would be the zone change from R1A to R4. Can we have a motion on that item?
Make a motion to forward to the city council, DSA 200085, zone change from R1-A to R4 on 22 acres, for the following conditions set by staff.
Move forward to the city council.
Yes, that's what the motion was, Is
I'll
there a-
second that.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion and a second. Discussion on that motion. If not, we'll have a roll call vote, please.
Member Estrada?
Yes.
Member Snyder?
No.
Member Anderson?
Yes.
Member Dugan?
Yes.
Member Tucker?
No.
Okay. Mark, I believe that motion passed 3-2. You concur?
Yeah, that's what I have was 3-2. So the motion would pass with 5 members voting.
Great, thank you. Okay, the last item we have is the zone change from R1A to PAD RV.
I'll make a motion to approve DSA-2, what is it, 20-00086, a zone change from R1-A to PAD RV upon, for 24.9 acres of land, subject to the following conditions, and then move forward to the city council.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the R1A to PAD RV proposal. Is there any discussion on that motion? If not, let's have a roll call vote, please.
Member Estrada?
Yes.
Member Snyder?
No.
Member Anderson?
Yes.
Member Dugan?
Yes.
Member Tucker?
No.
Okay, that motion also passes in a 3-2 vote. Thank you. So that concludes our public hearing items. And we'll move into reports by the planning director. We did approve administratively a minor site plan for that Circle K on Potabom and Florence to increase their parking area. So their parking area expansion was approved. There was a Board of Adjustment decision regarding a proposal by a nonprofit to provide mobile homeless showers for homeless on the west side of the auditorium building, and that temporary use permit was denied by the Board of Adjustments. We had 3 city council decisions on planning commission recommendations. The first was that zoning text amendment to modify the side yard setbacks within the R2. That was approved by council. The second zoning text amendment was in regard to the hours and days of operation for the medical marijuana dispensary. That also was approved by city council. And lastly, there was a zone change for the Francisco Grande to put it in a PAD zone, and that was approved by city council. We have provided you with the monthly Development Center reports, which this shows the end of our fiscal year of 20, mid-calendar year of 20. So with that, I guess we'll have a motion to adjourn.
So move.
So move.
So moved.
Oh, I don't think, we don't need to vote on that, do we? Do we vote on a motion to adjourn?
Happy 4th of July.
Happy 4th of July. Thank you for your indulgence this evening. Appreciate everyone's patience.
Adjourned.
Stay safe, everybody.